Mr. Vice Chair, are you here?
I am here, Mr. Chair.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Staff, are we ready to roll? All right, there's Mickey. Will Al be here to co-host, or Mickey, will that be you tonight? All right, so I will read the public notice and then I will begin. Okay, meeting's being recorded. Great. I will read the public notice and then give the following instructions as to how we will conduct tonight's agenda. City of New Haven meeting agenda, Health and Human Services Committee, being held on Thursday, February 25th, 2021, 6 p.m. Board of Alders notice New Haven. The Health and Human Services Committee of the New Haven Board of Alders will hold a public hearing on the following legislative items on Thursday, February 25th at 6 p.m. video conference. Please click the URL provided in the public notice, or to join by audio only, 312-626-76799 or 929-205-6099 and enter the webinar ID 981-6909-0881. And the passcode is 02-170-1490. The items introduced today are from Alders, the President Walker Myers, President Pro Tem Morrison, Majority Leader Furlow, Third Officer DeCola, Deputy Majority Leader Rodriguez, Black and Hispanic Caucus President Clyburn, Alder Santiago, and Alder Marchand, submitting an order establishing the legislative priorities of the New Haven Board of Alders and calling on city partners to increase their commitment of resources in order to enable the city to provide services and to advance key policy priorities. Order a resolution from Alder Sabin concerning endorsing and supporting the federally proposed Equality Act. Good news there. From the Health Director, a resolution authorizing the city to apply for and accept a subcontract grant for Family Center Services of Connecticut from July 1st, 2021 to June 30th, 2024 in the amount of $355,016 annually to provide parents as teachers home visitation services. If you wish to present testimony at this meeting, you must register in advance by calling 203-946-7934 before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Public comment may also be submitted via email to publictestimony@newhavenct.gov before 2 p.m. on the day of the meeting. These items are on file and available in the office of the City Clerk, 200 Orange Street, room 202, New Haven, per the order of Honorable Darrell J. Brackeen Jr., Chair of Chest, the Honorable Michael B. Smart, City Clerk. For disability-related accommodations, please call 203-946-7833 voice or 203-946-8582 TTY prior to the meeting. I will begin the meeting by introducing members of the committee first in order of your committee placement, and then I will provide instructions as to how tonight's proceedings will happen. We will start with my vice chair.
Ron, Vice Chair, Ward 3.
Alder Clyburn. Okay, just for the record, Alder Clyburn is here. And we do see you. I think she's got to work on the audio. Alder Winter.
Stephen Winter, Ward 21.
Alder Kupo.
Alder Allen Kupo, Ward 8.
Alder Sabin.
Alder Eli Sabin, Ward 1.
Being that the committee has quorum and being established, I will now state the instructions for tonight's proceedings. I'm asking that all members of the public to please note that these instructions are to ensure that every voice is heard and that everyone that wants to testify are able to testify on many of the important items laid out for today's agenda. First and foremost, I'd like to welcome my colleagues who are on the board, and I will acknowledge and name them all now. President Walker Myers, Alder Antunes, Alder Smith, Alder Festa, Alder Marchand, Alder Singh, Alder DeCola, Alder Roth, Alder Wingate, Alder Festa, Alder Carmen Rodriguez, and for the sake of, I just don't remember, President Pro Tem Morrison. I believe I said her name, but I'm not sure. And just apologies if I don't see you on my screen right now. I will be sure to announce you at some point throughout tonight's proceedings. And actually, as just making sure that everyone is on mute. I do see some members that are not on the committee that are not on mute. So I'm asking that you mute yourself so that we can ensure that we can hear everyone. So on tonight, I would normally welcome my honorable colleagues to join us at the dais for a normal hearing, but due to the sake of the nature of this hearing, I unfortunately will only be able to allow members of the committee to do questions on tonight. But you are more than welcome to testify if you so do choose to do so. Now, this is a directive to staff. If there are alders that are not presenting an item tonight that would like to testify, let's try to get them in the lineup first, if all possible. I want to ensure that our colleagues are able to testify. Next, for members of the public, this is a little different. As you can tell, we are all on Zoom, and I know it's been sort of normalized, but if this is the first time you've experienced this, I just want to walk you through just some basic things. All of you, for the most part, are in the attendees room of the Zoom. So we do see your hands. It will be the staff people that acknowledge any questions that you may have. I would also encourage you to use the question and answers feature that's in the Zoom section. If you do not get an answer right away, please bear with us. We are going to ensure that we're able to address and accommodate you as much as we possibly can. Those that are testifying on tonight, you were requested to send registration to public testimony at newhavenct.gov. If you are interested in still giving testimony on tonight, you still can use that email address, and also indicate that somewhere in the chat or using the raise hand function, and we'll ensure that staff gets you onto the queue after those that pre-registered to speak are able to speak. Once again, there are well over 121 individuals on this Zoom on tonight, and it is imperative that we stick to 3-minute testimony. We will be graced tonight with our vice chair's alarm clock, Alder Hurt, who we're all are familiar with. Please, we are not, we want to hear everything you have to say. And we're doing this in love because we want everybody who wants to speak and to be heard to be heard. So please, if you hear the alarm or if you are cut off, please know we are doing this in the most loving way that we possibly can, considering the circumstances that we're in. So I just want to repeat it one last time. If you are testifying, you have 3 minutes, and our illustrious vice chair is timing that 3 minutes. You will likely hear his alarm or you will hear his voice. Certainly, we do not want to interrupt your testimony. That is why we ask that you submit your full testimony via email at publictestimony@newhavenct.gov. You still can do that. Even if you didn't necessarily write it, you still have time to write even afterwards or dictate it to our staff so that we can ensure that your voice is on the record. And as I'm going to pause for a moment in my instructions just to acknowledge our Alder Jill Marks has joined us. And yes. I believe we are all set. Now, I just want to be clear, honorable colleagues, thank each and every one of you all for joining us. But it'll only be members of the committee that'll be asking direct questions on tonight, but you are more than welcome to testify. And we'll be sure to put you onto the record. So we have 3 items on the docket on tonight. And also I just want to ask folks patience, right? Technological issues may occur. I'm working with my staff. We have Mickey, who's one of our lead staff person for this committee. And I believe Mr. Lucas, I'm not totally sure, but he may arrive or not. We'll see in a second. We're gonna kind of do this like a TV show, okay? They're gonna be my co-hosts, all right? So they're gonna announce you because I don't know, I can't see, and nor do I have the feature to see, who's testifying or not. So I will also ask and apologize beforehand. You will hear noise in my background because my loving daughters are 3 and 4. So that is 1. 2, if we mispronounce your name, please correct us and we'll ensure that that's addressed in the record. Again, testimonies are for 3 minutes. The vice chair will time you and he may politely interrupt, but we ask that you wrap at that time. So we are going to hear our first item from our honorable colleague on our committee with a resolution endorsing and supporting the federally proposed Equality Act. We will hear testimony from Alder Sabin, and then we will hear testimony from members of the public. The floor is yours, honorable colleague.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For generations, LGBT people in New Haven, in Connecticut, and across the country have suffered from discrimination in our society, preventing them from getting jobs, finding places to live, and experiencing the peace of mind that we all deserve. And I'm proud to be supporting the Equality Act resolution tonight, which will make sure that everyone in our community understands that they are equally valuable and entitled to respect, dignity, and opportunity in their lives. And this resolution before us also endorses the Federal Equality Act, which would amend the 1964 Civil Rights Act to protect people from being discriminated against based on sexual orientation and gender identity in employment, housing, and other services, as well as in access to public accommodations such as restaurants. Many states across the country continue to deny these basic protections, and we need to change that. The Equality Act actually passed out of the U.S. House of Representatives on a bipartisan vote earlier today, which makes it even more important that we add momentum to the movement for LGBT rights by passing this resolution. If we do, we will be the 14th municipality in Connecticut to do so, joining Hartford, New Britain, Torrington, Middletown, Essex, New London, East Hartford, Seymour, Roxbury, Wyndham, Pomfret, North Haven, and Stonington. I urge my colleagues to vote favorably on this important resolution. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Sabin. At this time, we will take testimony from members of the public, and that'll be done through our staff. So if I ask that everyone that has your hand raised at this moment, please lower your hand, because that is our indicator for whether or not you are testifying on this item. If you are testifying on this item, raise your hand, your digital hand, which should be located at the bottom of your screen. That'll allow staff to ensure you're testifying on the Equality Act item. That is what we're submitting testimony for. So I'll repeat that. It is the Equality Act item as raised by our honorable colleague, Alder Saban. That is what we're taking testimony on at this moment. So I'll turn it over to staff to announce and bring in the first person. Oh, but before I do, I'd like to acknowledge Alder Jody Ortiz. Thank you so much for joining us. And it appears we have our first speaker. Please state your name and address for the record. You have 3 minutes. Staff, who was brought in?
Dr. Monkelly, are you testifying on this item? Dr. Monkelly, are you testifying on this item? Okay, we'll come back to Dr. Monkelly. Next up is Brittany Mabry Nyblack.
Please state your name and address for the record and unmute yourself.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brittany Mabry Nyblack. I live at 323 Edgewood Avenue. Can everyone hear and see me? Because I'm...
Yes, we can. Loud and clear.
Thank you. I'm testifying tonight about the importance of job programs and access to good jobs, especially during this time of crisis. I am a mother of 2, and like many residents in New Haven, I was raising my children while working many part-time jobs to make ends meet. I was literally working around the clock to cover my bills and support my family.
Yep.
Jobs didn't provide sufficient benefits. I only had one job that provided healthcare subsidy, and that was less than $100 for my entire family. I have a college degree, and I knew that I was qualified for better jobs, but it was hard to find an opportunity. I am proud to say I was able to find better employment opportunities and change my situation when I joined New Haven Works and quickly got a good union job at Yale University. My family became even more secure when my mom joined New Haven Works and also got a job at Yale University. These jobs provide a real living wage, and we know have access to top quality healthcare. I no longer need to constantly worry about slipping behind on bills while working many jobs at once. Instead, I started neighborhood housing and currently living with my mom because I will be purchasing a home within the next couple of months. The Yale University First-Time Homebuyers Program has also assisted with this process by giving me an initial down payment of $7,500 towards my down payment and closing costs. I am afraid to think about what my mother's situation would be if this crisis happened a year ago and we didn't have a job at Yale. We would probably both be on unemployment, wondering what will happen next. Sadly, I know this is a situation for many of our residents in New Haven. In this crisis, it is important for large employers and the city to continue supporting programs like New Haven Works. Even though Yale has an operating surplus and endowment is at historic high, it has been implemented at a higher cost. The pause is hurting New Haven. Now is the time for large employers like Yale to lead by prioritizing New Haven. The need for New Haven residents to have access to good jobs is now important than ever. It will mean security for families, access to health care for kids, and stability for our city. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brittany. And, that was a wonderful, powerful testimony. And I just, for the sake of this committee, I allowed the testimony to ensure that it is allowed for the record. So members of the committee, if you would, at the pleasure of the chair, I'd like to move her testimony to the third item, which will be heard on tonight. Thank you so much for your testimony. It will be accepted for the proper resolution. Members of the public, just want to explain, we are addressing the Equality Act resolution on tonight at this very moment. The grand finale is coming, but we do have some business that we want to ensure that we are able to address before we get to that point. So if there are any members of the public wishing to testify on Alder Sabin's Equality Act resolution, please raise your hand and or in the chat, submit your name to staff so that you can be acknowledged at this time.
Mr. Chair, I believe, excuse me, Mr. Chair, I believe that John Board is wishing to testify.
I appreciate that. Absolutely, that's helpful. Thank you. John Board, please state your name and address for the record.
Yes, John Boyd, 37 Highland Terrace, New Britain. Good evening, Chair Bracken, Vice Chair Hurt, and members of the Health and Human Services Committee of the New Haven Board of Alders, and it seems like all other alders as well. My name's John Boyd. I currently serve as chairman of New Britain Pride, the city's LGBT non-partisan outreach organization. Tonight, I come before you in my individual capacity to speak on item number 2, Alder Sabin's resolution to endorse and formally support the federally proposed Equality Act. I won't go into the details because I think Alder Sabin did a great job summarizing the Equality Act for you guys, but in our state, communities like New Britain to Roxbury, Seymour to Stonington, Hertford to New London have all endorsed HR 5, proving once again that there is a bipartisan consensus for this resolution. We have people in small towns and urban cities all coming together around this resolution. Like Alder Sabin said, today's vote of 224 to 206 in the House of Representatives shows that there's bipartisan support for this historic legislation. Republicans, Representative Cato, Fitzpatrick, and Reed joined every Democrat in support. And if this committee votes yes on this resolution tonight, it'll be sent to the board, and then it'll be sent to Mayor Elliker, and New Haven will become the 14th municipality to join this statewide movement. I would encourage members of the board to reach out to your colleagues across the state to encourage more towns to join. Alder Sabin has my contact information since I'm trying to coordinate all 169 municipalities, which is a challenge to say isn't the least. But while this resolution may be straightforward, I'm prepared to answer any questions that members may have. Once again, I wanted to thank Mayor Elliker and Alder Sabin once again for collaborating with me on this project, and thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony. We'll be ensured to take care of this item as necessary. Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify, or any that Alder Sabin may have identified? Okay, seeing none, we will continue over to the next item. From the Health Director, resolution authorizing the city to apply and accept a subcontract grant award. Is there someone from the Health Department or from the administration here to speak on this item? While we wait, I'd like to acknowledge colleagues Alder Ferraro Santana. I've already acknowledged Alder Ortiz and Alder Edwards. Thank you for joining us. Are there any city staff representing this very important grant for Family Center Services?
I saw them here a minute ago. I'm trying to find them in this list of over 100 people.
Which is a record. So if you can raise your hand, that would be helpful to staff if you're able to.
It was Brooke Logan. I saw her in the list before, but I'm not seeing her now. Brooke, are you there? Raise your hand.
She must have lost her connection.
Okay, friends. Well, yes, the deputy majority leader was acknowledged. And all right, so, well, if she does come back, she will have to wait until the very end of this hearing for it to be heard. Okay, so for the moment we've all been waiting for, I would like to call all the makers of the legislative priority item to the virtual stand to speak on behalf of this very important item. Please state your name and address for the record, please.
Aisha Walker Myers, 225 Winthrop Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut.
Jeanette Morrison, 130 Winchester Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut.
Alder Evelyn Rodriguez, Ward 4, 79 Arch Street, New Haven, Connecticut.
Delphine Clyburn, Ward 20, 175 New Hall Street, New Haven.
Alder Adam Marchand, Ward 25, 101 West Elm Street.
Okay, I believe that's all the makers, or maybe someone's missing, I'm not sure. You may proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank the committee for allowing us tonight to come and talk about our legislative agenda, which is our priorities that we're setting for basically the city and for this term. So our legislative agenda was created and crafted from years and years of conversations door to door with neighbors, through surveys, community meetings, to really understand what the citizens in New Haven found to be really important to them. And after the years of that work, jobs for New Haven residents, a safe city for everyone, health, equity, and vibrant communities, environmental justice, and quality affordable housing were the things that people cared about from year to year, right? And we have made some significant progress, which you'll hear from my colleagues later, on these things, but it is much more work to do. Last year, I gave the State of the City address through the Black and Hispanic Caucus and highlighted a number of inequalities in our city. And normally we will vote on this legislative agenda through unanimous consent. But this year, we decided to actually have the real conversation. We need to have the conversation over and over in that city, because we are going to continue to try to affect change for our residents. And until we have a real conversation about poverty in this city, we're going to continue to fight for jobs for New Haven residents, have issues around safe streets, be talking about affordable housing and things of that nature. And I just think that because we have come so far in trying to bridge that gap in the city with the neighborhoods of need, we need to step it up and we need to continue to talk about it. So we're trying to, if the committee and the rest of the Board of Alders vote on this, we are really focusing in on these priorities for our city. And I will yield now to my colleagues to explain a little bit about the things that we have done and where we're trying to go. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chair Brakeem. All of my colleagues on the Health Service Committee. I'm in support in our legislative agenda, and I embraced our commitment for good jobs for New Haveners and especially the neighborhoods of great need. Every family should be able to live in a safe, vibrant community and be self-sufficient and independent, able to feed and educate their families, and have pride that will be woven in their children's lives. Thank you, Chair Brackeen.
Thank you, Chair Brackeen, and my colleagues on the Health and Human Services Committee. I too join in support of our legislative agenda and embrace our commitment to New Haven's health equity and vibrant communities goal. To accomplish this goal, the Hill Alders and the rest of my colleagues on the Board of Alders are strengthening communication partnerships with residents and with local, state, and federal government. We have committees such as yours that allows for public hearings and workshops where we engage with all partners in this endeavor to address concerns by residents and others regarding health equity and quality of life in our communities. Communication is the fundamental key that we have to hear the health inequities and to act upon them in order to have a vibrant, healthy, equity New Haven. Thank you, Mr. Chair Brackeen.
Okay, have all the makers.
Good evening, Mr. Chair. We have just one more. Good evening, Mr. Chair and honorable colleagues of this committee. My name is Richard Furlow. I live at 62 Fairfield Street in New Haven, and I'm the alder for the 27th Ward and Majority Leader for the Board of Alders. First, I want to thank our esteemed President, Alder Taisha Walker-Myers, for leading the charge in developing this plan of action for our board and the other members of our leadership team and Alder Marshad, who helped to give structure to this resolution. This resolution covers a span of very important issues that we collectively must concentrate on, as we've heard, for the health and forward motion of our great city. I know that each one of these items impact each of our communities and wards in one way or the other, and I'm sure that there will be alders who will concentrate on some of these points more than others. I am particularly interested in a safe city for everyone and quality affordable housing. As we continue to draw millennials to our city who are interested in a city with walkability, strong and responsive public safety, quality affordable housing and blight-free neighborhoods, economic development, all the while they are building their futures. And then on the other side, we have our empty nesters who are looking to downsize, consolidate, moving into smaller places that they can call home, settling in and enjoying what they have established. I believe that it is imperative that we continue as a board to look at ways to accommodate these two diverse populations and those that are in between, like me. In closing, Chair Brackeen, I fully support the entirety of this resolution, and I'm looking forward to working with all of our colleagues, those in our Democratic caucus, to strengthen what we have already started and are doing, as well as passing new legislation like the inclusionary zoning that will continue to rank our city the greatest small city in America. Thank you, Chair Brackeen, for this opportunity and members of the committee.
Thank you, honorable colleagues and leadership of the board. At this time, Alder DeCola, did you need to speak?
Yes.
Where'd it go?
Sorry.
Oh, okay, yeah.
I apologize. I had an incident going on my ward. My name is Sal DeCola, Alder Ward 18 and third officer. I echo everything that my colleagues have been talking about, all those issues. My love and passion is environmental justice. I've been advocating for a greener and healthier city for all our communities, neighborhoods, and our children. And as our board moves forward on this, This will greatly improve the quality of life in our city for all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Third Officer. Any other makers? Okay, moving onwards. At this time, I'd like to restate our instructions for tonight. In order to ensure that everyone's voice is heard, we have limited testimony to 3 minutes. If you have already reserved your spot through the office or via email, staff does have your name on the list. If you are interested in submitting written testimony, you can still submit that to publictestimony@newhavenct.gov. If you are just joining us today and are interested in testifying, you can simply do that by using the raise hand function on your screen, so that staff will be able to add you to the list. Again, you'll need to state your name and address for the record. And also, just a reminder that you'll have to mute yourself when you are brought on the screen. I know it's simple, but often forgotten. So first unmute yourself and then state your name and address for the record. And I will be supported in this process through staff. So let's get started.
Okay, first you have former Alder Dolores Colon.
Please state your name and address for the record.
All right, I think Alder Colon is having some issues. Former Alder Colon. Since Alder Colon, you have unmuted. Go ahead, former Alder Colon. If you're talking, we can't hear you. All right, we'll come back to former Alder Colon while we work out her audio issues. In the meantime, we'll go to number 2, Pastor Kelsey Steele.
Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Kelsey Steele, the pastor of the Berger Memorial and Zion Church, Dixwell Avenue 242. To President Taisha Walker Myers, to Chair Alder Burkeen, to our Vice Chair Ron Hurt, and to our distinguished alders of Dixwell, Stephen Winters and Jeanette Morrison. The city of New Haven has been hit badly during COVID-19. However, we were struggling long before the pandemic. Children attend underfunded schools. Our public works department is stretched thin. Our police force has continued to get smaller, and many of our residents live from paycheck to paycheck in deep intergenerational poverty. We also pay one of the highest property tax rates in Connecticut. But with nearly 60% of our property being non-taxable, it is impossible to adequately fund services that will provide for the needs of our residents. It's very important for the Board of Alders to focus on these priorities that affects the most vulnerable in our city. The community has been fighting for good jobs and access to a good quality of life, and I commend our Board of Alders under the leadership of Taisha Walker Myers for highlighting these priorities for this year. Yale calls our neighborhoods underserved communities, but I call them neighborhoods of need because we need support, we need jobs, and most of all, we need resources in order to impact our community. And so I am in strong support of each of these priorities. Humbly submitted, Pastor Steele.
Thank you so much, Reverend Steele. Are there any questions from members of the committee only? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Next up, is Miss Rebecca Corbett. Yeah.
Please state your name and address for the record and also unmute.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hi, my name is Rebecca Corbett. I live 616 Winthrop Avenue in New Haven. Thank you for letting me speak. As a member of the Affordable Housing Commission, I'm glad to see affordable, equitable housing on the board's list of legislative priorities. I also want to applaud the alders for their work on the Affordable Housing Task Force, which laid the groundwork for our commission. As a mother and a longtime New Haven resident, I know how important affordable housing is to families. When my sons were young, we were evicted from an apartment and we became homeless. I want people to understand that when jobs are scarce and housing is as expensive as it is, families are just a paycheck away from being in that position. Our life changed when I became part of the New Haven Residents Training Program funded by Local 34. I was hired by Yale and I was able to provide a home for my children. Eventually, as a single working mother, I was able to buy a house of my own. Stories like mine shouldn't be rare. We need more residents in New Haven to have these opportunities. It would transform the city. We also need to acknowledge the effect of Yale University and Yale New Haven Hospital's tax exemptions on our housing situation. As I'm preparing to retire and live on a smaller income, it's infuriating to know that I could pay $1,400 less in taxes each year while our city provided the same services. If Yale University and Yale New Haven Hospital paid their full property taxes just like me. I want to recognize that a legislative agenda like this one, which is desperately needed to reduce inequality in our city, is going to require Yale to step up and contribute their fair share. I hope that the Board of Alders can work in partnership with big institutions in our city to deliver the affordable housing and jobs, which not only change individual lives, but will shape the systemic racism and inequality in our city. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee only? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony on tonight. Just a word of note, I'd like to repeat the instructions as I do see a lot of questions coming in. Just to be clear, if you have not pre-registered to testify, you should use the raise hand function and or the question answer function to indicate that you are interested in being added to the list. The staff is diligently monitoring both paces and places. So please note that everyone that wants to testify can testify. If you must leave earlier than expected, please do send your testimony to publictestimony@newhavenct.gov and it will be properly documented for the record. Next on the roster, I'll turn it over to the staff.
Chris Ozick.
Please state your name and address for the record. And you are on mute.
Ozick is having a audio issue, not sure. If you can hear us, Mr. Ozick, we need you to unmute. While we work on that, we'll go to Ms. Amparo. Ms. Amparo, you may unmute.
Hi, I'm Jill Zamparo from 124 Front Street. I am the president of the River Place Homeowners Association, which consists of 88 units along Front and Exchange Streets, and we are asking for safe streets. We We need more police. We need more police presence. We are lacking signage in our park with hours. And we are just hoping that you can increase the funding for the New Haven Police Department to appropriately staff them to not only serve my neighborhood, but I know this is a problem for many in the city. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there questions from members of the committee only? Seeing none, put it back into the hands of the staff.
All right, we will close up. Here. All right, number 6. Dana Ashby.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Dana Ashby and I live at 100 Howe Street. Thank you, board, for hearing my testimony. I'm currently a resident of Ward 2 in New Haven. I support all of the legislative agenda, and I'm here specifically to speak about the health equity issue. I've been fortunate enough to live in many states in the US, as well as England, France, and Japan, so I've seen lots of variations on healthcare. I spent the first few years out of college living in Japan, where I experienced some severe physical and mental health problems that sent me into the hospital, psychiatrist, and dentist office frequently. Yet I didn't pay much at all for this care, as I was on a nationalized medical plan where the government set uniform rates for services. When I came back to the US, I was shocked at how much health insurance cost and how little it actually deducted from the large medical bills I received for the same services I got at a low cost in Japan. I was lucky enough to have excellent health insurance as a teacher that was similar in cost and benefit much later when I returned to the States. This was only possible because the teachers union fought for such a robust package. When I decided to go back to graduate school to switch careers, I found myself working several part-time jobs, and I was on Medicaid during periods of and underemployment. Once I did get a steady but contract rather than full-time work in my field, which is really common in research, I had my first encounter with the Affordable Care Act. I'm not sure how the rates are calculated, but in no way is $450 a month an affordable rate for my health insurance. I simply can't pay that much each month on a service that would still leave me with thousands of dollars of medical debt if I were to use the services that I should be able to. Our healthcare system is broken and is not benefiting the majority of Americans, but rather a handful of executives making billions of dollars in profit each year by denying insurance claims, raising premiums, and holding American lives hostage as they become the authority on what levels of care are not acceptable, aka profitable. Americans deserve a single-payer health system. New Haven residents deserve a single-payer health system. So I urge you to think about this when you're focusing on health equity this year. And I urge you to endorse a Medicare for All resolution as a municipality. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee only? Seeing none, thank you very much. I'd like to acknowledge our honorable colleague, Alder Decker, and staff. I'm not sure if Alder Santana had a question or just acknowledging that she's here, but her raise hand function, if that can be removed, that would be great.
Also, Alder Hamilton is here.
Honorable colleague, Alder Hamilton, thank you for joining us.
Actually, I wanted to speak, Alder Darrell.
Oh, okay, well, we'll take you now.
Thank you, Alder Bucky, for acknowledging me.
No problem. Alder Santana?
Yeah, I'm unmuting. Good evening, colleagues, and thank you for entertaining my comments. This evening, this is an important step in the resolution for our city. And knowing that affordable health care, which I've been encouraged to fight for years, is finally coming to fruition with the Affordable Action Committee and other things that the city has been doing. So I am I applaud all the efforts that everyone has made to make that happen. We have a lot of young people that are not able to have homes. that are between the age of 17 to 25 and that are living on the streets. And I know that someday they will all be able to have a home that they can go to that will help them. These are young people that cannot live at their homes. They've been thrown out on the street and they deal with it each and every day. So I appreciate everyone's effort to continue to do the work that's necessary to get this done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alder Ferraro Santana. Any questions for members of the committee only? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Bring in Ms. Kim Hart.
Please
Hi.
state your name and address for the record.
Yes, sir. My name is Kimberly Hart, and I live at 1456 Ella T. Grasso Boulevard, New Haven, Ward 24, and my order is Yvette Hamilton. I am here to speak about Medicare for All. We are working together for a New Haven municipal endorsement for Medicare for All. And I know that the Board of Orders has priorities that include New Haven residents, public safety, and health equity. And I know that the Board of Orders declared racism itself as a public health crisis. High quality healthcare is a human right for every person in New Haven. Universal access to comprehensive healthcare is an important part of public health, and the city of New Haven has declared racism to be a public health emergency. 1 in 10 people of color in New Haven has no healthcare coverage at all, and many more are underinsured. The quality of life for the residents of New Haven will vastly improve because they will vastly, because they would be able to will vastly improve because they were able to get the ongoing care they need. Because right now, the non-insured, the underinsured are going to the ED, the emergency department, as a regular healthcare thing, and it's costing the city and the government a lot of money. The New Haven Board of Orders supports Medicare for All Act and calls on our federal legislators to work toward enactment of the Medicare for All Act of 2021. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions from members of the committee only? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you. Okay, I'm done.
Have a good night. Please state your name and address for the record.
James Bendari Alexander, 72 Alden Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut. I'm also here to ask you to consider, as part of your health equity plank of the Alder's priorities for this year, promoting Medicare for All, a resolution promoting Medicare for All and endorsing Medicare for All. You've heard some of the items already. I'm a longtime legal aid attorney and last 12 or 13 years, and I deal with people who are trying to get onto existing programs. It's very, very difficult for people. I represent particularly people coming out of incarceration, very difficult to get onto Medicaid. I represent uninsured and undocumented or people who are seeking immigration status but don't yet have it. Medicare for All, a single payer system, exists in Canada. And what it does is it redistributes the cost of health insurance away from, for example, the city of New Haven, which, if I'm reading the budget correctly, pays $85 million a year for employee health care, to the taxpayers, and particularly to wealthy taxpayers, so that as New Haven is no longer on the hook for paying, the taxpayers of the United States are on the hook for paying. What it leads to is no copays, no premiums, no deductibles, and a system that works for everyone. There's a few other statistics that are New Haven specific I wanted to share with you, and I want to respect your time. One is in New Haven, 14% of residents of predominantly Black and brown zip codes have medical debt in collections. That's not just medical debt, that's medical debt in collections. And 10% of residents from white majority zip codes do. In New Haven, 10% of people of color have no health insurance. In New Haven, there are entire sections of the city where a majority of people have no health insurance. What we're trying to do by bringing this to your attention is to suggest a couple things. One, your agenda, the markers you're setting is amazing. We would like you to contemplate this type of activity, making an appeal to Congresswoman DeLauro, to Senator Murphy, asking them to support Medicare for all, because the city can't solve every single problem by itself. And health insurance is a problem we can solve if we all come together across the country, as people are doing, to support Medicare for all. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for your testimony and your work to the service to the city. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much. Please say your name and address for the record.
Hi, my apologies. Hello, good evening, everyone. My name is Jesus Morales Sanchez, and I am a resident of 270 Edgewood Avenue in New Haven. I would like to state that I'm here to testify in support for the Board of Elders to support policies such as Medicare for All. I have been a New Haven resident for the last 10 to 11 years since my family migrated from Mexico in 2010. Some of you are familiar faces to me, as we have shared spaces focused on the protection of the diverse community of New Haven, especially our immigrant residents. My story is not unique to an immigrant family. I come from a family that is mixed status, which means that people in my family, like me, are US citizens. Some of them are permanent residents, and some of them are undocumented. I was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes at the age of 23. I was diagnosed after losing 100 pounds very rapidly, after hesitating to visit a doctor for months, because at the time that I was starting to display symptoms, I did not have a medical insurance, even though I wasn't employed full-time. By the time that I was actually diagnosed, I was unemployed, and again, with no insurance. It took nearly a month from the time in which I agreed to see medical help and the time that I was able to actually go into a doctor's office and receive the care that I needed. It was then that I learned that my blood sugar had been running 5 to 6 times the normal concentration that it normally should, and that it was almost like nothing short of a miracle that I had not fallen comatose in that time. It was through the following weeks that I received regular checkups. I obtained my insulin. I was able to afford my insulin through a program called 340B, which is currently under attack, and pharmaceutical companies are pulling out of the program, which is a safety net for patients who are uninsured and unable to afford life-saving medication. It took months of health, the emotional impact of my diagnosis, and the endless bureaucracy for me to finally be able to be enrolled in Husky D. I joke that it is lucky that in my family, we are lucky that it was me who got sick and not any other member of my family who would not have been able to have access to these safety nets. So as of today, my story would have been probably completely different, as again, these programs and safety nets are under continuous attack. We don't know if 340B program could have saved me had my diagnosis had been today rather than 2 years ago. New Haven loves our immigrants, our residents, and it is through the support of policies like this that do not discriminate because of immigration status that we can really create a welcoming city for everyone. So thank you very much for your time.
Thank you so much for your time and testimony. It's greatly appreciated. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I think we're going to try again with Chris Ozick. I do see video. If you can just state your name and address for the record.
Yes, Chris Ozick, 603 Quinnipiac Avenue.
Sorry for that technical difficulty. I was driving and could not get to it. I pulled over. Thank you, alders. I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you tonight and appreciate that you're talking to us about the agenda that you're thinking about. As you know, I've been really interested in environmental justice. And I have a little story. I live on Quinnipiac Avenue, right across from the Oyster Company. And they're bringing in oysters and clams and stuff for the shells. And usually we have a lot of seagulls there, but we don't have seagulls there anymore. You know, currently, all the seagulls are down the street at the transfer station that is not supposed to be taking wet trash. And so there are hundreds of seagulls there every day. And what that's telling me is that we have an environmental justice crisis happening in that neighborhood still. And one of our problems is that we just don't have enforcement. We don't have enforcement by the state. We don't have it by the city. And that is part of what I'm hoping that we can strengthen our environmental justice laws to look at cumulative impacts, but also look at permitting and fees and monitoring that is all rolled into one when a business comes in so that we can protect the health of our most underserved communities. I know not everybody lives in an EJ community, but it's something that we should be respecting and thinking about for all of our community. Second thing is that we're in a reevaluation part for our homes and our taxes. And what I feel is a major blight issue is that the assessment is based on condition of the home. And so if you were to take off the condition, it would mean that if I picked up my home, I will not be penalized, but people that deliberately, especially landlords that keep their properties in poor condition, are actually incentivized to have blight and to pay less taxes. So those are two things. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much and drive safe.
Thank you.
Next up is Ms. Tammy Gardner.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Tammy Gardner, and I live at 574 Congress Avenue.
Thank you.
I am okay. I am heartened to see that the Board of Alders taken on such an aggressive agenda, especially the issue of affordable housing. I have lived in the New Haven area for many years, and affordable housing has always been an issue for me. Because of the system we have now, I do not qualify for public housing, and the housing that is available in New Haven is too expensive. Because of this, I live in a shared living situation. Would I prefer to have my own place? Of course. Due to the pandemic and personal health issues, I am unable to go to my job as a manager for a fast food restaurant. People in this city deserve affordable housing, but many hardworking people do not have access to it. I know many young people and single parents are having a harder and harder time finding housing, but it must be solved. Although the city is in a dire financial situation due to the pandemic, we need the resources to solve this problem. This is why I believe the large institutions like Yale University and Yale New Haven Health need to do their part. These two organizations own half the city, yet they barely contribute anything to it. I have 9 grandchildren, and I want them to live happy, healthy lives. I want them to get good jobs after they graduate school, find housing that is affordable, and live in communities that are safe and welcoming. If these large institutions paid their fair share, we could all live in that future. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee only? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
All right, next up is Mr. Remedy Sharif.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Remedy Sharif, Hamden, Connecticut,
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Board of Alders. I've been a lifelong New Haven resident. I was born and raised in New Haven, Connecticut. I work as the Executive Director of Outreach for Ice to Beef, and I am also a leader in New Haven Rising. I'm here to testify in support of the legislative agenda, and I am especially excited to see the Alders prioritizing public safety, public health, and jobs. As the Alders know, gun violence is a growing crisis in our communities. Gun violence is a public safety issue, but it is also a public health issue and jobs issue. Improving public health will help address gun violence. I work with youth who are at risk of committing gun violence or have committed gun violence. Many of these youth are suffering with mental health challenges. When the youth grow up in a violent environment, they become desensitized to gun violence. They need access to mental health resources to address this trauma and break the cycle. We also know that violent crime in New Haven closely follows unemployment in the city. When people don't have access to good jobs, they lose hope. When people lose hope, they are more likely to engage in violence. In my work, I meet with youth and work with them to help them make better decisions. In these meetings, I talk to them about racism and the unfair obstacles that they face. One of the first steps to leaving violence behind is recognizing these obstacles and recognizing the frustration and anger that they can cause. I know the Alders are dedicated to changing the maps in New Haven, and I believe that this is key to addressing the violence that our city experiences. Youth in poorest neighborhoods have less opportunities, and we have to change that. The poorest neighborhoods in New Haven are neighborhoods that are more Black and brown residents. These neighborhoods have higher asthma rates, higher COVID-19 infection rates, higher unemployment rates, and shorter life expectancy. This segregation is a cause of gun violence in our city. Finally, the Alders in our city need partners and like leaders at Yale to see the crisis and actually value our lives. Our city needs resources to provide access to mental health services, provide better public health safety, and provide youth more opportunity. I personally have always felt like the system of government in America has been broken. We are begging the Board of Alders to help put these pieces back together in New Haven, Connecticut, so we can live with peace, justice, and equality. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. As a word of note to folks in the general public, you are indicated by a number, a participant number, in the participants list. That is how you know what order you are in. The last speaker was number 11. Next on the platform.
Next will be Miss Annie Harper. I see Alder Haywood has joined you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Alder Haywood, for joining us. Ms. Harper, please state your name and address for the record.
Excuse me, this is Annie Harper. I wasn't planning to give verbal testimony today. I just submitted written testimony.
Okay, thank you. Duly noted.
Thank you.
All right. Next up is Lumisa Bista. Give me a second to find Lumisa. Lumisa. There you are.
While we bring, okay, she's in the room. Well, but before she speaks, for folks that are, again, at the bottom bar of the screen, of your screen, if you are on a computer or a mobile device, you will see a button that's called Participants. It's at the bottom there. And you should see your name indicated with a number next to it. So I apologize for that. You may proceed. Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Alicia Vista. I actually am a student here at Yale University, so I don't reside in New Haven. But yeah, I'm Alicia Vista. I'm I'm presenting testimony along with Amelia Oliva, and we are students at Yale University speaking on behalf of the Endowment Justice Coalition. We are an organization of students as well as alumni and New Haven community members working together to hold the university accountable for its financial practices and their consequences for New Haven and for communities on the front lines of climate destruction and imperialism. We want to express our support for the legislative agenda of jobs for New Haven residents, quality affordable housing, environmental justice, health equity, and safety beyond policing. We join our friends at New Haven Rising in affirming that we can make this vision possible if Yale contributes its fair share to the city. We would like to offer a critique of Yale's endowment, which has amassed to a total of $31.2 billion through high-yield investments such as private equity, foreign equity, and venture capital. Often the most profitable industries are those that extract resources from the earth or from communities vulnerable to exploitation. We know that Yale currently invests in fossil fuel companies, prisons and prison labor, immigration detention centers, nuclear weapons manufacturing, big tobacco, and landmines, and has profited from distressed sovereign debt in Argentina and Puerto Rico. The Endowment Justice Coalition has taken action to demand divestment, and we believe that divestment must be accompanied with reinvestment in New Haven, and that everyone here can help make that happen. Over the last 2 decades, Yale's average yearly investment return was about 10% more than its Ivy League peers, and the university has still spent less than planned. Given its wealth, we believe Yale's contribution to the city is inappropriately low. The university is one of New Haven's biggest landlords, but receives an annual property tax break of $157.7 million. As a member organization of the Yale Fair Share campaign, we call on Yale to make a fair share payment of this value to the city. New Haven would benefit from more support for health and human services without an extra burden on the taxpayer. We are aware that Mayor Elliker is engaging in conversations with the Yale administration, and we urge him and the Board of Alders to consider demanding a fair share payment. Other wealthy universities such as Princeton and Dartmouth make fair share payments to their cities, and they are less wealthy than Yale. In times of crisis like the current pandemic, it is often a strategy of wealthy institutions to withhold money and resources for the sake of austerity. Given that Yale has been saving and growing its endowment for so long, now is the time to share.
Your time is up.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Are there questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Next up is Amelia Oliva.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Amelia Oliva, and I live at 256 Bradley Street, New Haven, Connecticut. Good evening, everyone. My name is Amelia Oliva, and I am from the Endowment Justice Coalition. I am glad to see that the Board of Alders is prioritizing jobs, quality affordable housing, environmental justice, health equity, and safety beyond policing. I believe that this agenda can move us toward justice for residents of the mostly Black and Latinx neighborhoods that have been most affected by redlining, systemic racism, gentrification, and police presence. I want to speak about how we can make this agenda happen with a fair share payment from Yale, which could bring funding for health, human services, education, housing, and more. Our friends at New Haven Rising are leading a movement to change the maps and have shared their knowledge with us. We learned that the same neighborhoods that were the sites of redlining in the 1930s are more likely to be current sites of unemployment, foreclosures, higher asthma rates, lower life expectancies, and worse impact from COVID-19. We want to note that our university has invested in predatory lending practices that lead to poverty and has profited from foreclosures here in New Haven. Meanwhile, its private police force occupies the city to protect property and criminalize poverty. In 2019, the majority of calls to Yale police were not emergencies. Many involved medical care, mediation, or response to fires and hazards, but only 3.8% of calls involved theft, and about 0.5% involved violence done to another person. We know that theft happens because people are trying to survive, and this year has made survival harder for many. But when Yale's response is to send in officers with guns after a theft has already occurred, nothing is being fixed. We see a cycle in which Yale's wealth, accumulated through exploitative means, is used to fund the police, and the police then protect the wealth of Yale affiliates. Instead, we need the university to invest in social services that care for people's needs and prevent harm, and we point to Yale's new, expensive, tax-exempt police station as one source of money. A fair share payment is not only necessary and very doable for Yale, but could pull money away from harmful activities like broken windows policing and toward life-giving services that the Board of Elders is working hard to support. We also want to make it known that, thanks to New Haven Rising's organizing, Yale committed to hiring 1,000 New Haven residents in 2015 and 500 people from neighborhoods of need, and still has not kept this promise, hiring less people and counting temp jobs as employment. Historically, the university hasn't prioritized local hiring, which would provide healthcare and stability for its neighbors. We have seen that Yale is willing to make sacrifices when it serves them. Last spring, in the first wave of the pandemic, the university canceled rent for its retail properties, but continued to collect rent on the 500 residential units it owns in New Haven. We believe a fair share payment is the minimum Yale can do to help build just communities. We encourage everyone here to join us, New Haven Rising, and the Yale Fair Share campaign in calling for a fair share payment to help make this vision of safe, equitable, and healthy communities a reality. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony.
Next up is Andrew Paul Gearing.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Chair Rakeen, Vice Chair Hurt, and honorable members of the committee. Andrew Gearing, 43 Harbor Close, New Haven, Connecticut. I'd like to start by applauding the alders for their ambitious legislative priorities and for squarely addressing issues of equity and racial justice. Growing up in New Haven, one learns almost immediately that there are actually two New Havens. I learned this lesson from a very young age. When I was a kid, my parents used to drive us around town, showing us their old stomping grounds and teaching me about the city that I would come to love. My dad grew up on Clinton Avenue in Fairhaven. My mom grew up on Ivy Street in Newhallville. And each time my parents would take us by the house my mom grew up on Ivy Street, afterwards we would cross over Prospect Street into the East Rock neighborhood and spend some time driving by admiring those big, handsome houses on St. Ronan Street. I remember even as a young kid how much it boggled my mind then, as it boggles my mind now, that such incredible wealth can exist blocks away from such incredible poverty. That is the truth of this city. You might not be able to tell just by driving by on 95, and you never glean it from a Yale University admissions catalog, but it remains the truth. We are a segregated city. There are, in fact, two New Havens. In Newhallville, which is 81% Black and 3% white, the life expectancy is 72 years. Across Prospect Street in East Rock, which is 64% white and 9% Black, the life expectancy is 83 years. That's a difference of 11 years on this planet. It means that, on average, white people in East Rock live 15% longer than Black people in Newhallville. A glimpse at Data Haven's website will also show glaring neighborhood-by-neighborhood disparities in income, wealth, and homeownership. The gap between the haves and the have-nots in our city has never been wider. We are at the top of every list of the most unequal places in this country. Racial inequality in our city will endure unless and until the people who live on St. Ronan Street, on Huntington Street, on Alston Avenue, on McKinley Avenue, recognize that they have more in common with their neighbors in Newhallville, Fairhaven, and the Hill than they do with the billionaire venture capitalists and hedge fund managers who control the majority of votes on Yale's governing board, the Yale Corporation. I call in particular on those with white privilege, especially those with positions of influence at the university or the hospital, to stand up to the Yale Corporation for the sake of equity and racial justice in our city. Yale's charity is not enough, and your silence is not neutrality. It is literally taking years off of people's lives.
30 seconds.
When I drive my son around New Haven, I don't want him to see rich white neighborhoods and poor Black and Latinx neighborhoods. I don't want him to see two cities. So please, New Haveners, instead of standing on the sidelines, stand with this Board of Alders and join us in remaking the map of New Haven so that together we can create what is truly one city, one New Haven. Thank you for your time and for your tireless and underappreciated work for the people of our city.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your time.
Thank you.
Next up is Dave John Bustamante.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, my name is Dave Cruz Bustamante. I live on 121 Chapel Street in Fairhaven, New Haven, Connecticut. I use he, they pronouns, and I'm a student at Wilbercross High School. And I'm a community organizer at Sunrise Movement New Haven and Citywide Youth Coalition. We are in need of urgent action to combat the climate crisis and the drastic inequality and poverty that we see in New Haven. 40% of New Haven residents can't afford or are struggling to afford basic necessities like housing and food. And 34% of the youth live in poverty. These numbers point us to various solutions that we need to collectively construct and implement immediately. A Green New Deal, a new public safety system, and greater accountability of the rich and large institutions like Yale, who have their buildings set on New Haven soil while not paying a dime in taxes as our infrastructure crumbles, as our schools run on a deficit, and as children go hungry. The climate crisis is very real, and that was made very clear in these past few years, in the past week as well, and it would be foolish and irresponsible to believe that people of color, disabled people, and working class families of New Haven won't face the brunt of devastation and loss brought on by the climate crisis and systemic racism. A Green New Deal is a strong and achievable policy that not only tackles the climate crisis, but also forges a path to dignified, sustainable living that listens and responds to the needs of the community. Healthcare and quality education for all, good paying union jobs created to build housing, community centers, green spaces, clean energy sources, and more. A new public safety system that provides specialized support to those who need it and not a bunch of people with guns is long overdue. These solutions may be difficult to ground and push federally, but can certainly be achieved locally. Poverty, inequality, criminalization, and the climate crisis cannot be deemed solved until every unsheltered person on the street has a home, until everyone has access to nutritious food, until poor people, people of color, and school children are not criminalized for being who they are while walking down the street and walking past the school gate, and until everyone has access to safe, clean streets and green spaces that make our city worth living in. Anything less of that is robbery of human dignity and human life. The people want this. All we need is political will. The will to collect Yale's check, the will to listen to neighborhoods and community members, and the will to jump into action and mobilize. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony.
Next up is Millie Greenough.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes, I can. Please state your name and address for the record.
So Alder Brackeen, Elder Taisha Mars, all the older people, everyone here, thank you so much for all the work you are doing. And thank you. I'm Millie Greenough, 45 Moreland Road, New Haven, Beaver Hills. And I'm speaking as a member of the Peace Commission, as a woman, mother, grandmother, and citizen. First of all, I want to thank the Board of Alders for unanimously approving to have on the referendum on November 3rd, the vote. The people of New Haven could vote if they wanted more of their tax money to be spent for human needs instead of going to the military and the Pentagon. And it was such a wonderful affirmation that more than 80% of people in New Haven voted yes for this. So I'm listening to Pastor Steele, to Remedy Sharif, from Ice the Beef, from all the people here, and the ones who are saying we need to get more money from Yale and Yale New Haven Hospital. That is true. I think we need to get more money from our US government, which is what the referendum was about. So we need to pressure our congressional representatives. The city can't do it alone. We need to invite Rosa DeLauro, Chris Murphy, Richard Blumenthal to see how do we want our tax money to be used? Do we need another nuclear submarine? Do we need more bombs and drones? Or do we need affordable housing, schools, jobs, good green jobs? So again, I think everybody for all the efforts you are making, and just hope that we can continue working together to go after the big money that's really our money, and let people know how we want it to be used so that it's used for human life, not for killing and subjugating. That would also cut down on the atmosphere of
30 seconds.
That's it. Thank you all for listening, and carry on. Thanks for your good work.
Thank you so much for your great work on the commission. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much for your time. For those that are just joining us, all testimony is pertinent to 3 minutes. I'd like to acknowledge my colleagues, Alder Frank Douglas, Alder Jose Crespo. Thank you all for joining us this evening.
All right, coming in is Andrea Downer.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, good evening, Chair Alder Brackeen. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay. I wanted to say good evening to Co-Chair Alder Hurt and the other alders that are on this call today. I am Andrea Downer. I am the Democratic co-chair to Ward 27, the DTC co-chair to Ward 27. It is very important that we have a vibrant community. Having a vibrant community is imperative in Ward 27, considering the neighborhood communities are moving fast-paced and increasing urbanization. It is understood for it to be truly vibrant, our residents must contribute and have a sense of pride while working with our local alder, the Honorable Richard Furlow, cohesive leads to make Ward 27 a great place to live. I am very much in support of the legislative agenda that has been brought about from our Aldermanic Board, especially concerning public safety and health and affordable housing. For example, neighbors were very excited to see 2 new businesses come into our ward. We had Cool Breeze Jamaican Restaurant and Woody Wings. As we look forward to more businesses opening in our ward, it's a plus because it brings about jobs. The other part that is so important to us in Ward 27, it is vital that we have safe, affordable housing, and it has to be available so we can avoid people from moving out of our neighborhood. We know it's gonna take the community to intersect and collaborate across many different disciplines to thrive and create a positive, sustainable growth in our ward. And I am in full support for any positive opportunities available. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee only? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony.
Coming in is Marika Phillips.
Hi. Hello. Hi, my name is Marika Phillips and I live at 135 Bellevue Road. I believe that the Board of Alders have identified really important priorities for our city. Changing the maps of racial and economic segregation is a call that is based on thousands and thousands of conversations that we have had at doors across New Haven. This agenda inspires me because it is not based on think tanks or technocratic savior ideas, but on the work that we have done together as a community, as unions and students and alders to build a grassroots agenda. This agenda is also inspiring to me because it recognizes that austerity is violence against our community. In a time of crisis, New Haven needs to be providing more services, not less. Austerity will deepen segregation and further the racist legacy of redlining. But it is hard to imagine how homeowners can pay much more in taxes in order to provide these services. So for this agenda to work, this agenda that I believe in, we need Yale and Yale New Haven Hospital to pay their fair share of taxes. The urgency for Yale University and Yale New Haven Hospital to contribute fairly to the city could not be more urgent. Rising unemployment and desperation in our city has predicated a rapid increase in gun violence, bringing shootings into neighborhoods across the city, including mine of Beaver Hills. COVID has burdened our most vulnerable residents the most. I am watching my Black and brown friends and colleagues, some of whom are on this meeting, get sick and lose their loved ones every single week, and it must stop. From where I am, all of this is in contrast to the suburb that I grew up in, just 45 minutes north in West Hartford. Our public schools had college prep, had after-school programs. I had class sizes as small as 16 kids. Families had access to good jobs. They could work one job and spend time with their kids on homework and on raising them. Families didn't have to choose between medicine and food like they do here. And our city didn't have to choose between paying firefighters and filling potholes. Crime was low and safety and quality of life were high. I know that New Haven could provide the same opportunities to its residents and families that West Hartford gets, if only the leaders at Yale and Yale New Haven Hospital could appreciate the urgency of this moment and the benefits of a true partnership with their host city. State Treasurer Wooden captured the moral injustice of our situation when he asked, is it fair for institutions as wealthy as Yale and Yale New Haven Hospital to receive a tax break that costs a city as poor as New Haven $157 million every year? It isn't fair, and we must work to change it so that we can move on changing the maps and delivering on all of the important priorities in the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony.
Okay, coming in next is Miss Dr. Pamela Monkelly. A second to find it. And then based on the folk that are signed up, it would be Elias Estabrook, Jamie Myers McPhail, Amber Seuss, Doris Doward, and Stacy Brzezinski if they are here. If not, we will go and find who's after them.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. Giving honor to whomsoever honor is due. My name is Dr. Pamela Monkelly, and the Special Director of the National Veterans Council for Legal Redress at 245 Highland Street. I am here to speak about an underserved community, and that is the community of U.S. veterans. You might find them in your home, on your job, or even on the New Haven Green. I am sure we have some veterans represented on this call today. Did you know that there is no housing dedicated, designated, or reserved for veterans in the greater New Haven area? Many veterans are among the most neglected, non-diagnosed, or underdiagnosed citizens in our community. They also experience high rates of homelessness and suicide. Additionally, they have the highest unemployment rates and, if employed, experience the lowest wage rates. They also have high rates of incidents with law enforcement. Our goal is to address these issues, causes, and serve those who have served our nation through military service. That is why the National Veterans Council of Legal Redress, a 501(c)(3) organization, plans to provide housing for veterans and their families in New Haven. National Veteran Council has connected many veterans to housing resources. However, with the increase of homeless veterans since the COVID-19 pandemic, there is a shortage of housing for homeless veterans. In response, National Veteran Council has taken the necessary steps to prepare for the purchase of blighted properties to build small housing units for veterans. Grants, donation, foundations, as well as investors will fund the project. We need your help. Please join us to discuss how we might help our organization provide housing and training for veterans and their families. I am in full support of the legislative agenda. Let us support the sacrifices of the many New Haven area veterans who have given so much for their country. National Veteran Council is seeking funds from the city of New Haven to jumpstart this housing development project. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much, Dr. Monkelly, for your testimony.
Yeah, thank you.
Next up is Elias Estabrook.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Elias Estabrook, 106 New Hall Street. Good evening, everyone. Tonight I'm here to talk about environmental justice and jobs for New Haven. I've been involved in environmental advocacy in New Haven since 2013. Last year, President Walker Myers used the Black and Hispanic Caucus address to make a powerful call to change the maps of systemic racism. I think that changing the maps and reversing climate change also means green jobs, which is another priority for the board. But when we think of a green job, we should also think of a local job. Yes, building wind turbines, putting up solar panels, and retrofitting buildings, those are green jobs. But healthcare jobs in our region are also green jobs. Municipal jobs like teaching and paraprofessional jobs are green jobs. And when companies invest in, train, and hire from local redlined communities, those investments actually help change the maps, mitigating both climate change and systemic racism. When people can walk, bike, or take one bus to work instead of commuting 40 miles, that's a green job. I have a green job. Green jobs can be good, fair jobs too, if the board and our other elected officials support the fight for equitable training, hiring, salaries, and benefits. Unfortunately, it is no surprise that women, Latinx, and Black workers are underrepresented in Connecticut's clean energy industry, according to a study released in November 2020. If we are going to change the maps of segregation and inequality, my Black and brown neighbors need an equitable share of the 44,000 jobs and counting in the state's clean energy industry. Because many of us still have to travel, whether to work or gather with loved ones, our transit infrastructure also needs work. We desperately need to take this moment of crisis and reckoning and turn it into an opportunity to overhaul our transit system and address air pollution. A study released in November 2019 said we need $8 million annually in additional operating money to improve bus service in Greater New Haven, and $15.5 million upfront to invest in infrastructure changes. In part, this means we'd be putting more money into transit jobs. I think we need to do this and more. Our city will need more revenue, as many people have said tonight, in order to follow through on these legislative priorities, including environmental justice. I think we should forge forward with this resolution with the urgency that this moment demands. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony this evening.
Next up is Mr. John Lee.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, sorry about that. My name is John Lee. I live at 699 Elm Street. My name is John Lee, and I work for the education nonprofit LEAP, as well as organizing with New Haven Rising and Sunrise New Haven. While I'm proud to call New Haven my home, our city is deeply divided, unequal, and underfunded. The Board of Alders legislative agenda recognizes the segregation in our community and presents a vision of a better way forward. Families in New Haven need access to better jobs, affordable housing, and healthcare. They need safer neighborhoods, especially in a time of crisis. And as Elias pointed to, the impending environmental crisis threatens to lock in segregation for decades to come. When I started working at a New Haven public school, children would regularly confide that hunger caused them to get in fights with classmates. Our go-to solution was a handful of animal crackers. When we implemented after-school meals, we saw fewer fights. We saw kids more interested and engaged in learning, kids happier and more energized to be around their friends and counselors. This spring, a high school student I work with shared his experience of organizing fellow students to talk to their principal at Edgewood about the need for more books in their library and a free after-school program, because students whose families couldn't afford the after-school program missed out on a safe space to hang out, play sports, and get academic support. When these students brought up the issues, their principal pointed to a limited budget. In New Haven, I found community members who have welcomed me into their own families, cared for me, and cultivated my moral spirit. The fact that many of these families' children live in such scarcity is wrong and unacceptable. Daily, our children are losing critical opportunities to explore, learn, develop into the leaders their communities need them to be, and also just be kids. Good jobs, affordable housing, and healthcare would address a lot of this suffering. But we have to ask why New Haven has already suffered so much when it hosts one of the world's wealthiest universities in the world. In an address for a Martin Luther King Jr. celebration, President Walker Myers said, "It's a sin to have one of the largest institutions and employers in the city, and a large majority of the people around that institution is." That is what it is, a sin. It's a sin that a city as poor as New Haven has to pay so much to sustain a tax break to Yale University and Yale New Haven Hospital. Real revitalization in New Haven is possible. It is not some wild fantasy, and the solution is simple. We need enough money to fund the responsible budget, and we need fair opportunities for good jobs with our largest employers. Our youth deserve it, and our families need it.
Okay, thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony.
We lost Jamie. Hold on. Okay, next up would be Jamie McPhail-Myers, but I think we lost Jamie.
I'm here.
Oh, there you are. Perfect. Okay, let's go. You're up.
Thank you. My name is Jamie Myers McPhail. I'm an organizer with New Haven Rising, and I live at 135 Bellevue Road. I believe the Board of Alders have identified important priorities for our city, and I'm also encouraged by this agenda because it is the people's agenda. In fact, a lot of these issues are the same issues that people of New Haven brought to the Board of Alders a long time ago. However, it didn't move at that time because there were too many alders who were unwilling to stand up to powerful institutions in our city. Fortunately, that changed in 2011. After a citywide organizing campaign, the people elected champions of working people. Deep organizing in our city with leadership from this board has generated important accomplishments that this legislative agenda reflects. Together with the alders, we have had thousands of conversations with residents across the city. And so the alders have prioritized the right issues. They established New Haven Works, established an Affordable Housing Commission, the Climate Emergency Task Force, and the revitalized Q House. Alders have transformed parks into real community spaces with splash pads, community gardens, and playground equipment. Most importantly, they've been willing to work with the community to stand up to powerful institutions and make progress on the important items in this agenda. Together is how we all moved Yale University on its jobs commitment to the city. The Black and Hispanic Caucus first called attention to the jobs crisis in our city and pointed out that this crisis was primarily affecting our Black and Brown residents. New Haven Rising and the unions at Yale pushed the university to make commitments to hire from our poorest neighborhoods. And then we all worked together to hold Yale accountable, which has been an ongoing project. New Haven Rising led a campaign with neighborhood meetings, citywide meetings, and canvassing operations that convinced over 1,000 people to put up Yale Respect New Haven signs in their yards. The Black and Hispanic Caucus then held Yale accountable by holding a meeting where hundreds of residents could testify about how they had been treated unfairly in Yale's hiring process. I don't know any other city in the country where large multinational corporations and institutions like Yale have to come before the community and be held to account. Together, these efforts have pushed Yale to deepen its commitment to hiring. But we know that we must still hold Yale accountable, and they must do much more in terms of giving our residents fair opportunities to get jobs at Yale. For me, this is what the legislative agenda represents. Our city will work together to fight back against decades of segregation. We'll do it by engaging our neighborhoods, sharing our struggles, and having thousands of conversations. We will use this consensus to appeal to powerful institutions like Yale University and Yale New Haven Hospital and hold these institutions accountable. They must pay their fair share and provide our residents with fair opportunities. This work will support the important priorities that the alders have identified, the people's agenda. We will insist that the suffering of this crisis has already been enough, and now is the time for a just recovery. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
All right, coming in is Amber Seuss.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. My name's Amber Seuss. I live at 82 C Street in New Haven. Sorry, I'm just getting my set up. Okay. So first of all, thank you all for listening to testimony. And I especially wanted to thank my alder, Carmen Rodriguez, and my former alder, if she's still on the call, Dolores. I think that the legislative agenda is really, really great. I think it's really thoughtful. I think it shows that the Board of Alders is actually listening to their constituents. And I wanted to talk specifically around the issue of jobs and employment in New Haven. So the first thing is that I'm really happy at the specific mention of New Haven Works. So I've been working in food service since I was 16. And, you know, it's always been check to check. There's either too many hours, you're working 3 doubles in a row, or there's no hours and you can't pay your rent. And the working conditions are really difficult on your body. You're standing all the time and you don't have health care, right? You always get scheduled for 36 hours. You never get scheduled for 40. They will do anything to keep you from getting the health care you need. As a result, I was on state health care for my entire adult life until very recently, except for a time when I was working 3 different jobs and I made slightly too much money to qualify for Husky. And I couldn't afford to go to the doctor at all. And so I started working with New Haven Works with a job coach, and I was able to sort of get my foot in the door at Yale. I started as a casual in 2018, and I was able to get to know people and make connections that led to me being full-time permanent employee of the university. And that has provided a level of stability that I don't think I ever expected to have. And I think that it's important that other people in New Haven have this access, that they're able to reach the same levels of stability
30
that
seconds.
I've had. The main thing is just that I can save money now. I can buy a house in New Haven. I can pay taxes here, and I want to do that. And I think that if more people are able to be hired through New Haven Works, they'll do the same. Thank you so much. I really think that our partner institutions like Yale should, in fact, be paying more money to New Haven Works. And I'll stop here, but thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much for your inspiring testimony.
Next up is James Berger. After that, we've got Will Robbins, Angela Lee, Kaya Day, Melissa Mason, Sivan Amar, Alana Irvin.
Please state your name and address for the record.
We can't hear you yet, Mr. Berger.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't realize I was on. Yes, I am here. Thank you very much. And I'm very glad to see the 5 agenda items, the jobs, the public safety, the quality affordable housing, health, and environmental justice linked together, because it seems to me that you've really identified what is a single agenda. The social, economic, racial crisis of New Haven is real, and the climate crisis is real. And I would argue that the fight for climate justice, the fight for better jobs and housing and for public health is all one struggle. And it's important to recognize that the fight against climate change is labor intensive. I mean, that's the thing which I think ties all this together, that it requires labor, requires actual human workers, and preferably New Haven workers who should be trained to do jobs and should be hired. We need the greatest cause of carbon loss and waste in a city is buildings, is through both housing and office buildings. So we need to retrofit and re-insulate New Haven's aging housing and retail buildings, and this requires workers. It requires labor. When I walk through downtown New Haven and I look up at our sky, what do I see? I see no solar panels. We need to install solar panels on all roofs and parking facilities where it is feasible, and this requires labor. We need to really radically improve the public transportation system, perhaps even merging it with Yale's shuttle system, and this requires workers to do it. So imagine New Haven residents trained in insulation and solar installation and hired to do it. You can call it a Green New Deal. You can just call it good green jobs for New Haven residents. But I think we could seriously create a lot of good union jobs if we, and at the same time, commit ourselves to combating climate change. The question, of course, is where will the money come from to do this? I would assume that with a new administration, in part, there'll be federal money coming, but not enough. From the state of Connecticut, not a whole lot. And so we're going to look to Yale. There's the push for Yale to pay its fair share is really important. The city is committed to getting Yale to pay more of its fair share. And it seems to me that using this revenue to train and hire New Haven workers
30 seconds.
Climate change should be a priority. And I guess I would urge us, all of us, to think not so much in terms of what people say, oh, we can do this, we can't afford to do this, this is possible. Think in terms of what needs to be done in terms both of economics and climate change. And then, we'll figure out how to do it. So thank you very, very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee only? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Coming in is Will Robbins.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello. Good evening, everyone. My name is Will Robbins. I live in Ward 8 at 6 Lion Street in New Haven. I'm a classical musician, and I would like to talk to you about supporting a Medicare for All resolution. In 2016, I took a year-long gig playing in an orchestra in northern Norway. When I arrived, I needed to open a bank account in order to be paid wages by the orchestra. This process would prove wildly difficult for a non-citizen to do. During the 3 months I spent getting myself situated with the bank, I became sick with an upper respiratory infection. I had received a notice in the mail after my second week in the country assigning me a primary care doctor. Not being one who particularly enjoys going to the doctor, I went anyhow because I just felt that sick. The visit cost the equivalent of about $12, and they prescribed me some medicine which cost a few more dollars. I could not believe that without seeking it out, I was just assigned a doctor upon my arrival, a medical visit was affordable, and that all of this was in fact easier than opening a bank account. Despite the fact that the populations of both Connecticut and Norway are roughly the same, I am well aware that they are not the same place. We have much better pizza, and they are full of ski-obsessed snow people. Since returning to Connecticut, I have mainly done freelance, benefitless gig work and have sometimes qualified for Husky D. I lost that insurance at the end of this past January. As I am lucky to be reasonably healthy now, I am foregoing health insurance at the moment because I cannot afford the premium. There's a moral reason for supporting a Medicare for all type of resolution, but there is also an undeniable economic one. The city spends upwards of $85 million on healthcare annually, a number that is on the rise. Cities all across the US are adopting resolutions in support of Medicare for all, including right here in Connecticut. I know that the Board of Alders has made health equity a priority here in New Haven, and that Medicare for all would be a massive step in that direction, considering the disproportionate amount of medical debt and uninsured in our Black and Brown communities. I am asking you to support any future resolution on Medicare for all because it is not only a fiscally sound policy, it is the morally correct one. Thank you all so much.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much and have a good night.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Angela Lee. Angela.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, everyone. My name's Angela Lee. I also live at 6 Lion Street in Ward 8. I have been a resident of New Haven for 9 years, and I'm currently a student at the Yale School of Medicine. And I'm also here to ask the Board of Alders to prioritize in their legislative agenda a municipal resolution supporting Medicare for All, and to call on our representatives in Congress to support the Medicare for All Act of 2021. So many people have spoken today about the various reasons to support a single-payer health system, including the fact that it would limit rising healthcare costs, freeing up funds to address many of the other great issues that are on the legislative agenda for New Haven, improve access to healthcare, and importantly, reduce health inequities that are baked into our current system of health insurance. I just want to speak a little bit about my experience as a medical student, being able to see up close the impact that being uninsured or underinsured can have on New Haven residents. Residents with limited access to healthcare are often forced to delay seeking medical attention because of the associated costs, which can lead to more severe presentation of illness, which may require more costly interventions to treat, not to mention the more significant impact on that individual's health. Patients may also be forced to choose between health issues that they can afford to treat at that moment, or choose inferior treatment options because they can't afford the one that is evidence-based and most likely to most rapidly achieve health for them. And I also want to talk a little bit about an area of growing need, especially as we grapple with the effects of the pandemic, and that is mental health care. People are suffering from job loss, from isolation, from the trauma of loved ones dying from COVID, and the increasingly violent outcomes of systemic racism that we see every day in many communities of color, all of which negatively impact mental health. And today, even with current insurance coverage, many still struggle to get adequate access to mental health treatment in particular. So a plan like Medicare for All Act of 2021 would provide much needed coverage for mental health treatment, which will only be in increasing demand as we deal with the fallout from the pandemic and all of the health and economic costs that have come with that. So for this and for many other reasons, we ask you to support a municipal resolution publicly supporting the Medicare for All Act of 2021 and asking our congressional representatives to also support this act. And with that, I'd like to really thank you for your time and for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, next up is Melissa Mason.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Melissa Mason. I'm the Executive Director of New Haven Works, and I reside at 165 Cohary Drive. First, I'd like to thank Chairperson Brackeen and the Health and Human Services Committee for holding this public hearing, and to the Board of Alders as a whole for staying focused on a legislative agenda that addresses some of our residents' most pressing concerns. Jobs have been a long-term priority for this board, and I'm glad to see that it continues to be a major priority for all of you. As you heard from Brittany, Amber, and others tonight, a good job transforms a person's life. It provides their family with stability. Many of our members of New Haven Works have gone from working multiple part-time jobs to stable careers that provide benefits and pay time off. Many were working in jobs that push them to grow and utilize their skills in education. And we're glad to have partners like the Board of Alders who have helped make this change possible for so many New Haven residents. So the Board of Alders was instrumental, as you know, in creating New Haven Works back in 2012, and as a part of the legislative priority of access to good jobs. And so since opening in 2013, New Haven Works has referred around 400 members to around 50 or 60 local employers each year, placed over 1,600 people into jobs with area employers. 52% of the people we've placed come from low-income neighborhoods, or what we often call neighborhoods of need. And 79% of the people that we helped find employment were Black or Latinx. Due to the pandemic, we've transformed our organization to operate on a semi-remote basis, but we're still working really hard to place our members in order to continue to serve the community and keep everyone safe. We took on the challenge of quickly converting our operations to a virtual process. So after setting up our virtual conference platform and transitioning all of our intake verification documents to digital formats and moving staff around to adhere to the state's COVID-19 guidelines, we continue our day-to-day operations without interruption. And so since the pandemic began, we've enrolled almost 300 New Haven residents into our program virtually, and have helped over 140 people get jobs. And so, I do want to thank the Board of Alders for continuing to be a key partner of New Haven Works, and helping us to continue to do the work that we do. And also, want to encourage members of the public to reach out to us, or those of you who are members, reach out to us. We're call us or visit our website, and we want to continue to really do our best to serve our community and help residents access good jobs. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much. Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Next up is Alana Irvin.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, I've decided to submit my testimony in writing rather than verbally tonight, since there have been so many great points already made about the need for Yale to contribute more to the city. But thank you so much for your work, and feel free to move on to the next person in the queue.
Thank you so much. Duly noted.
Okay, next up is Ann Schwartz. Find Ms. Schwartz.
Hello?
Yes, please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Ann Schwartz. I live at 95 Lion Street.
I was diagnosed with epilepsy in 2015, and after my seizures worsened to the point that I could not drive, I lost my job. I was unemployed for months, and I applied to every open position at Yale that I could find. And unlike many of my fellow New Haven residents, I was hired. My job saves my life. Because of my wages and benefits, I can pay for my medications, I can see specialists, I can even afford to see a therapist, and I can afford my rent. When I was unemployed, I was so afraid that I would have to go without some of my medication, that I wouldn't be able to live in New Haven, that I would find a job further out, and I would have to rely on our public transportation system, which, as we all know, is very underfunded. I'm lucky to have this job, but I know that for every one of us that is gainfully employed at Yale, there are many more who are qualified. And because Yale disproportionately hires white applicants over applicants of color, many of those qualified people are people of color in our community. And I know this because we have fantastic coworkers who have applied for jobs at Yale for years and years. So we know the best way to pay a New Haven rent is to get a Yale wage. The best way to get healthcare in this city is to have a Yale job. And while we know there is money to hire people at Yale, we know there's work to be done. Not enough New Haven residents are getting those opportunities. I support this agenda. I support all of the Board of Alders' efforts to get Yale and large employers to hire New Haven residents and to pay their fair share to help the city advance the rest of this agenda. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your powerful testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Next up is Mr. Howard Boyd. What happened to Mr. Boyd? There we go.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Mr. Boyd, we cannot hear you yet. All right, Mr. Boyd, while you work out your audio, let's see. We need you to unmute, Mr. Boyd. Okay. Let's see. While we wait for Mr. Boyd to get that going, we will go to Andres Farwell.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Hello, thank you so much. This is Andres Farwell at 37 Worcester Place. And I really appreciate the hearing that you're holding tonight and on these important issues. I think the agenda is a very good one. And I'd like to just mention a few things that could be components of different things that you've already identified. Affordable housing has been a major topic of the Board of Aldermen for quite a few years now, and I'm really glad to see that the commission has been set up. Something that I think could be very helpful to consider would be accessory dwelling units and how to expand zoning to allow them. It's one of the best tools for expanding the amount of affordable housing, both because a homeowner could perhaps afford their home because they can have a rental unit on their property. They can provide good quality housing for someone in a more intimate and family-like setting that can be particularly good for people struggling with mental illnesses and anxiety. And it can be a way of supporting the stability of each and every neighborhood in the city by having more people there. So I would love to see ways to look at regulations in zoning reform to allow ADUs in addition to some of the other really excellent affordable housing initiatives that are being looked at. The environmental justice, as you know, has been a very important part of the work of the New Haven Urban Design League for all of its 20-year history. And I think we need to look more at regulations, I agree with what you've heard from Chris Ozek about permitting, and also looking to maybe define the definition of the things that can be put in particularly heavy industrial districts.
30 seconds.
Oh, okay. Just, I have a whole bunch, but I will put some things in writing. One of the things I think would be important to look at that is very difficult for the city to manage are the tank farms and infrastructure in the port. And there's a particular problem that I think needs some regulatory and political attention. And that's the status of particularly Buckeye Pipeline that's considered a national security asset and is exempt from local property taxes while it produces vast amounts of pollution and can interfere with development. So thank you very much. And I appreciate your work.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony, and I'd like to welcome the junior member of Ward 8, the junior alder. Who's next?
I believe Howard Boyd has worked out his audio issues.
All right, Mr. Boyd, state your name and address for the record.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, good evening, everyone. The agenda, thank you, Darryl, and the Board of Aldermen, and the agenda that you guys put together, I think, is excellent. Everybody had a lot of good views and points this evening, what should be going on in the city and what the Board of Aldermen are going to try to do to improve our city improvement. Right along with the Hill North management team and our alders, Evelyn Rodriguez, Ron, the whole Hill together, and Carmen and Kent, working very strongly to, make better things in our community. And things on the agenda, I hope we could stay together and stay strong and make it happen to improve our city, health-wise, safety, homes for everybody, jobs and everything. So I deeply like to say thank you so much, and let's get the job going for our city. Our residents need it. Our community needs it strong.
Wonderful. Just for the record, if you could just state your name and address.
Howard Boyd, 4th Ward, 819 Congress Avenue.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Okay, coming in is Aaron Good, followed by Leslie Radcliffe and Ethel Berger and Leora Tressman. All right, let's go on with this. Good.
Please state your name and address for the record.
We'll need you to unmute, Mr. Good. You are unmuted, sir. Go ahead.
Yeah, can you hear me?
We can.
Hi, yeah, Aaron Good, 45 William Street. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and distinguished members of the board. I applaud you for the priorities set forth in your legislative agenda, and here are just a few brief suggestions about how we can still accomplish some of those goals. despite the very perilous budget situation facing us. Number one, I'd like to see participatory budgeting, or NPIP, restored. This was something eliminated in last year's budget. Many creative programs and solutions for meeting some of the biggest challenges faced by our city have come out of participatory budgeting, particularly in the area of traffic safety, much needed area. We need neighborhood-based solutions, and NPIP was and is fundamentally about neighborhood empowerment. So I hope we can look at that. Number two, on the housing and development issues, there's a lot to say. Let me just recommend two recent reports. First, the New Haven at a Crossroads 104-page report by Robert Orr, Emily McDermott, Robert Polinsky, and Joel Schiavone that proposes some approaches to reforming our zoning in an inclusionary and new urbanist direction. It was just presented at the Downtown Worcester Square Community Management Team, contains some very interesting ideas about equitable, inclusive development and livability. And I also recommend the Compact Living Initiative report that was authored by Catherine McCormick and submitted to the City Plan Commission last March 2020. And this report applies lessons learned from housing case studies in Encinitas, California, and Boston, and makes concrete suggestions for reforming New Haven's zoning ordinance by deregulating accessory dwelling units, tiny homes, and eco-villages in the interests of both housing affordability and environmental sustainability. On environmental justice, also a lot to say about that. Let me just associate myself with previous testimony by James Berger, and by Chris Ozick, and also recommend that you take a look at the municipal environmental justice ordinance that was drafted in 2011 but never adopted by the city. And I submitted that to the board, to your staff in writing. So I hope you can take a look at that as well. Thanks very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Okay, coming in is Leslie Radcliffe.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Leslie Radcliffe. My address is 20 King Place, the city of New Haven. I'd like to thank the Board of Alders, this commission, for hosting this meeting and giving the public opportunity to provide testimony, and for the initiatives that you all are working on. I want to speak a little bit about the quality affordable housing issue. Article 25 of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights recognizes the right to housing as part of the right to an adequate standard of living. We must not only address the need for affordable housing, but as the legislative agenda reads, quality affordable housing, which requires setting standards and enforcing the standards that we currently have. Recent newspaper articles have been published about addressing affordable housing in Woodbridge with a proposal submitted by civil rights attorneys and Yale law students. I would implore our Board of Alders, the City Planning Commission, which I currently chair, and the Board of Zoning to take up the baton to begin once again to work on the reviewing and revamping of the zoning ordinances. We should be working towards changing the regulations to allow for builders and homeowner occupied residents to provide for and convert their homes and properties into affordable housing, whether they're converting garages into cottages for age-in-place senior parents, SROs for singles who spend little time in their units, or boarding houses for the working poor, and to revamp some of our antiquated zoning regulations that can cripple or stymie these initiatives because of the processes, particularly the need to prove hardship and granting of special permits. We're all aware of the building boom taking place in the downtown and surrounding areas, the Novella, Corsair, Winchester lofts, but this housing is generally not affordable for the average New Haven resident. But we also cannot continue to hold developers hostage to mandates of providing affordable housing percentages, mandates that they can choose to walk away from. But we can and must find ways to support and promote quality affordable housing with the stock we already have. Financial assistance and tax incentives for local builders, nonprofits, and contractors to rehab some of the boarded up units could go a long way to address the issue of the lack of quality affordable housing. Revamping the ordinances to allow for the conversion and building of more quality boarding houses and SROs in more neighborhoods in New Haven. We have the units. We must remain in, most of us want to remain in New Haven, but we must ensure that the affordable housing is of quality. This can be partly accomplished by revamping the zoning regs and ordinances, but also providing the inspection and enforcement of anti-blight regulations currently on the books. I thank and encourage the Board of Alders to vigorously push the agenda for quality affordable housing. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your testimony and service to the city. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Coming in next is Ivor Johnson.
Please state your name and address for the record.
We need you to unmute, Ms. Johnson.
Yes, good evening. I'm Ivor Johnson, 113 Rock Creek Road in New Haven, Connecticut. I would like to thank the Board of Alders, President Walker Myers, committee, and special recognition to Alder Smith of the 30th Ward. Our community is in need of everything that this resolution speaks of. Communities are entitled to centralized locations that are equipped to deliver items in your committee agenda. We would like to be able to deliver them in an orderly fashion, and Ward 30 has been long under-recognized by the city, and the parts of this resolution agenda would just help to change all of that. I ask that you support our quest to secure a central location and embrace us on an ongoing basis to carry out the substance of this resolution. Thank you so very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony and service to the city. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
So next up would be Ms. Ethel Berger. It appears, let's see, that we have lost Ms. Berger. So we will go to Leora Tressman while we look for Ms. Berger.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening all. My name is Leora Trestman. My address is 904.5 State Street. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I've lived in New Haven for 5 years in many neighborhoods around the city and have worked as an elementary school teacher and engineer, currently as the shop manager at Make Haven. When you picture in your mind a healthy, vibrant community, do you picture streets like Whaley that are more like highways, where people have to drive for fear of getting killed if they bike or walk? No, of course not. Unfortunately, we have built our streets like highways with suburban commuters first in mind. This has led us to having high rates of asthma among children, pedestrians and cyclists getting killed at record rates, and a city that, in spite of its small size, is really hard and dangerous to live in without a car. I, like 1/3 of the households in New Haven, do not own a car, and it's not easy. However, I save a lot on taxes, on parking, car maintenance, and gas. I also get to exercise every day, get to my job easily and faster than the cars stuck in traffic, and can stop easily and frequently at stores even if it wasn't planned. The high cost I pay for these luxuries is risking my life every day. In fact, a few years ago, I was struck and nearly killed by a truck in New Haven. So many people just last year weren't as lucky as I was and lost their lives to speeding cars. One of the easiest and most effective things we as a city can do to improve quality of life for so many thousands of people is just to make it, just to make it easier and safer to get around our city without a car. Imagine how many shops would open up if parking wasn't needed for drivers, how many small units could be developed for housing if a parking lot wasn't a necessity, and how much we could do for the health of our city and its residents if we committed to investing in making our streets not just for the 70% of people who can afford a car, but for all the people who live in the city. Buses, bike lanes, and crosswalks are the future. Some of the legislative actions that could help make this future reality include eliminating parking minimums from our zoning code, reaffirming the commitment to complete streets that was passed 10 years ago and has had little effect, and funding safe routes for all at all possible opportunities. And this is not terribly related, but in addition, I believe that if Yale should hire more New Haveners, which it obviously should, the city of New Haven should also do the same. It strikes me as a little bit ridiculous how much of our tax money disappears to the suburbs that could otherwise stay in the city if we had more city staff as teachers and police and firefighters, et cetera, who worked in the communities they lived in. Thank you. We need to address the blight of slumlords, make it possible to develop smaller lots and accessory dwelling units, as well as so many of the other things that other people have mentioned tonight. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Next up is Karen Walton.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Dr. Du Bois Walton, we need you to unmute. There you go. Okay. While we wait for Dr. Du Bois Walton to unmute, we will go to Devin Absalom Smith.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Thank you, Chairman Burkeen and Vice Chairman Hurt, members of the Health and Human Services Committee. My name is Devin Absalom Smith. I reside at 231 Star Street, Newhallville, Ward 20, District 94. I support the legislative agenda and would like to say that I am particularly grateful for the work of Alder Clyburn, Alder Winter, and Alder Edwards. Newhallville is an historic neighborhood with rich with important locations that are dilapidated and have been neglected. It has tremendous potential, which was demonstrated in the past by high rates of home ownership and local businesses that have since declined. Why are we still hampered by zoning regulations that make it challenging to open businesses other than liquor stores or corner stores? On hunger, community members have had to organize and rally together to feed thousands of meals to our neighbors in order to curtail the pain and health problems caused by chronic hunger and malnutrition. Why do we have to suffer more than neighborhoods with higher employment and median income rates? The environment is depressing and filled with misery. Newhallville community members make the best out of a bad situation and find joy where they can. But let there be no doubt. The crime, substance abuse, truancy, and volatility found throughout the neighborhood is housed in misery caused by the sheer neglect this community faces at the hands of city government and community partners. I can't be satisfied with the efforts that have been made at the city level to support Newhallville because I live here and experience the reality of seeing desolation everywhere. I hope my testimony stands as a reminder which fuels your continued recommitment to this neighborhood in particular. I ask the Black and Hispanic Caucus to take bold and calculated action with results focused to see their legislative priorities implemented. The residents of Newhallville demand an increase in the commitment of resources from the city and from the city's partners. If the urgency of my testimony seems misplaced to anyone listening, I suggest you come to live in Newhallville for 1 week, 1 month, 1 day, 1 year, or simply come to visit by taking an evening stroll. What you will witness is the resolve and strength of a people who have been segregated to a place of dark obscurity in the city of New Haven, a place where we go to find peace, but often find the terror of what it feels like to live in a war-torn environment. We will continue to fight for our lives every day. Will you? Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much for your powerful testimony.
Okay, Mr. Chair, it appears that Dr. Du Bois-Walton has unmuted and is available.
Wonderful. Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening, Karen Du Bois-Walton, 58 East Pearl Street in gorgeous Fairhaven. How are y'all? Thank you for the opportunity. Thank you for the opportunity to testify to Chair Rakeen, Vice Chair Hurt, and the honorable members of the committee. It is my pleasure to be here to address your legislative agenda, which is so aligned with the things that we've been working on. As you know, I'm the president of Elm City Communities, the housing authority for the city of New Haven. I have been there since 2007, where our vision is a New Haven where everyone can afford a safe and decent place to live and then has opportunities to fulfill their goals. I have submitted written testimony for you as well, so I will not read that verbatim and ask that you take a look at the points that I make there. But our vision is so aligned with the vision and the legislative priorities of this board, and I write to offer my perspective and fully endorse the items that I see coming out of this board's leadership. At Elm City Communities, we are invested in creating communities of choice where we are developing the highest quality affordable housing in mixed income communities with services and opportunities for our residents. Through this, we have created improved infrastructure, new street grids, created bike paths and walking trails, brought in new retail spaces and community amenities. But most importantly, we've been investing in our residents so that it's not just about the brick and mortar and the new and improved design, but it's about helping residents, meeting them where they are and helping them move forward to reach their dreams for their own lives, starting with prenatal, with pregnant and early parenting families through school-aged, launching young people, partnering to try to ensure that young people graduate ready for college or ready for a good paying job that's going to lead them to self-sufficiency. We also serve a number of residents with disabilities and residents who are aging, and our goal is about quality of life. And the lessons learned around how we're building stronger communities, not through stronger walls or higher walls, but through figuring out how to build places that feel inclusive, that offer opportunity, is a pathway forward that is so aligned with what I see in your agenda. So I'd like to just highlight the investment of the city with the partners like the Housing Authority and like our other partners to invest in affordable housing, to invest in wealth creation efforts, to continue to invest in our public school education, to continue investments in community cohesion that leads to community safety, and ultimately to do this through an equity lens as we continue to center those who've been marginalized and do our work together. I think that you've outlined a path forward that I want to fully endorse, and in my written testimony offer a few suggestions about how we might move together in partnership. I thank you for your time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much, Dr. Walton, for your testimony.
Thank you.
Next up is Benjamin Parsons.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Oh, yay, I'm on. Okay. Benjamin Parsons, 32 Riverton Road, Riverton, Connecticut. I have been passionate about climate change and tackling the climate crisis for as long as I can remember. I was born in 2003 when the Acadia Center released a roadmap for how Connecticut could solve the climate crisis, install 100% renewable infrastructure, and Connecticut has been sitting on that report for as long as I have been alive, and I would love to see a Connecticut that is based around renewable infrastructure. So I'm going to talk about environmental justice and how we can tie it to all of the key legislative points. It is imperative that New Haven tackle the climate crisis through proactive policy. Environmental justice policies must be implemented that create jobs, bolster small businesses, and put public health and community well-being front and center. This means securing part of the city budget to address the emergencies recognized by the city of New Haven and making concrete beneficial solutions available to New Haven and its residents. In the midst of a global health emergency, Reinforcing policy and infrastructure to benefit public health has never been more important. If the Board of Alders were to allocate $1.1 million, just 0.2% of the city's budget, to creating a climate justice and green jobs fund, these secure resources could create new energy projects that would reduce long-term spending, uplift small businesses, cut costly energy waste, and improve community quality of life to save families money and create jobs. Transforming New Haven to energy efficiency would benefit public health by reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing air pollution, electrifying public buildings and public transportation, ensuring bike lanes and other community means of transportation to improve public health and reduce healthcare costs. This would address factors of health inequities and climate crises that disproportionately affect communities of color and negatively affect the health of New Haven residents on a daily basis. With funds secured for environmental justice, New Haven could implement climate education for New Haven students that would promote awareness of the climate emergency and create community service opportunities for a stronger and more vibrant community. Establishing a climate justice and green jobs fund would create jobs for New Haven residents, improve city infrastructure, benefit public health, and create a vibrant community in New Haven. Thank you for this time, and thank you for holding this public hearing.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Okay, next up is Patricia Kane, followed by Kathy Fay, John Angelo, Rodney Williams, Shafiq, Abdul Sabbar, Kim, and Takira Bell, and Allison Freeland. Let's go to Kathy. Ms. Kane, you are on. We just need you to unmute.
I have unmuted.
You're good to go. We can hear you well.
Excellent. Good evening. It's very late, so I will be brief. My wish list, I looked at your list, and a lot of it is very general. So I'm supporting a few, suggesting a few specifics. One would be zoning changes, which some other people, including Mistress Fowle, had mentioned. Zoning changes so we can plan for affordable housing without subsidies. Second, the budget has to be addressed in your legislative priorities. How about a freeze on tax breaks for new development or redevelopment till the board adopts standards as to who's entitled, under what conditions are they entitled, how long might they be entitled? I don't think there's any transparency to the process at the moment. Third, I have submitted a proposal for mandatory notice to neighborhoods that addresses the periodic controversies that arise over changes in neighborhoods and changes the process so that the public isn't asked merely to ratify changes, but has notice in advance before anything proceeds at any city agency, board, or commission. My next suggestion would be we need a better ethics ordinance. This frankly should have been addressed at the last charter revision, but was ignored, even though a number of people brought it up. The purpose of a good ethics ordinance is not to catch people doing bad things, but to advise them so that they don't. It's to give them good counsel so they can proceed. It's a positive. Finally, we must tax our wealthy nonprofits. Now, I know this is a matter of state law and not local law, but New Haven has one of the best array of elected public officials in the state legislature. If there is a grassroots rising up on this issue, surely other towns that have similar problems, Hartford in particular, would join. But we must tax our wealthy nonprofits now The residents of New Haven subsidize Yale, Yale New Haven Hospital, Tweed Airport, and a burgeoning group of developers. We can't afford.
30 seconds.
Thank you, I'm finished.
Thank you.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Oh, Patricia Kane, 731 Quinnipiac Avenue.
Thank you so much. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you so much for your testimony.
Coming in is Kathy Fay.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Kathy Fay, 61 Springside Avenue. I want to thank.
I just wanted to say hi. I haven't seen you here in a while. That's all.
You may proceed. Sorry about that.
Okay. I want to thank you all for allowing me to provide testimony and for producing this legislative agenda that shows that you all already understand how closely interconnected the items on it are. Jobs for New Haven residents, public safety for all, quality, affordable housing, health equity and vibrant communities, and environmental justice are all inextricable from one another. And I want to bring up a couple of examples of some things that are happening right now and suggesting that maybe there be some better communication between the city and the parties that are doing these things. One initiative that I've been drawn into is the Mill River Urban Waters Initiative, which was an initiative by the State Department of Energy and Environmental Protection that's really focused on the Fairhaven neighborhood. And although I work at Neighborhood Housing Services, it doesn't focus that much in Fairhaven. I've been one of the more vocal people trying to make sure that that effort recruits local residents, even in the design of how things move forward. So, there are efforts like that throughout the city, but I just wanted to draw that one to your attention. And the main thing I want to focus on, though, really is about housing and environmental justice and electrification and home energy and that node, and to really offer my support in any way that I can support, and to let you know that in my day job, I work on a project called I Heart My Home, which provides individual counseling to residents that want to make any kind of home improvements that involve energy, whether it be whether they be renters, landlords, or individual homeowners. So in a nutshell, I want to offer that help and to point out that making improvements to city buildings and private residences on the energy front boosts all of the other items in the legislative agenda. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, we'll be bringing in John Angelo next, followed by Rodney Williams, Shafiq Abdul Sabor, Takira Bell, Allison Freeland, and Kim Harris.
Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is John Angelo, and I live at 62 Fairfield Street, New Haven, in the 27th Ward. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the opportunity to speak before this committee. Briefly, I would like to speak in favor of the legislative agenda that is before this committee. I have been involved in grassroots organizing and community outreach in the ward, and these 5 items will help give a boost to some of our underdeveloped and emerging areas, especially the quality, affordable housing piece. As a young man married and with children, being able to build a future family, purchasing property without having to pour all of our earnings into rent is crucial for our long-term planning. To live in a place we can be proud to call home while building a home with our name on the deed is important. Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members for this time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Coming in is Mr. Rodney Williams.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Can you see me? Yes. My name is Rodney Williams. I live 222 Division Street, New Haven, Connecticut. I'm in Ward 21, and Steve Winters is my alder. I'm gonna say that I've been coming here testifying since George Perez probably was the chair, the president of the board, talking about the same thing to a lot of you alders that are here, and some of you new alders. To me, what it's about is it's about the future for residents in our city, and this city is benefiting a lot of people other than the residents. I look at your agenda. I listened to everybody that came up before me. Up until now, I have not seen anybody in the field that I'm in, construction, when we have several $1 billion worth of work that came through this city. And I know I sit here listening to you guys talking about a lot about New Haven Rising, a lot about New Haven Works. I want to be very clear about one thing. I'm known as Mr. Rock Drywall, Right Way Landscaping, and Green Elm Construction. Me, my family, my kids, I'm gonna be okay. God got me, and that's a fact. I do not know what it is that need to happen to this board of alders to understand that everybody needs to stay in their lane. Sometimes help ain't help, and we all on the same mountain, and your truth is your truth, but my truth is my truth too. And the truth I'm speaking on is the people who are on the mountain where I'm at, and they're not where you at. So you saying help us, but we don't see the help. It's not, for years, billions of dollars came through the city. I don't know, we had Paul Bass write stories. When I was on the Board of Education, had documents about that for the schools, how we getting robbed. I don't know how much information I got to keep giving to a same board for y'all to do something to make it change. And we keep having these meetings. And even now, everybody is testifying. They testifying how everything is great. It's not. We got two cities we live in. We got a city and let me just tell you, what you guys doing? Oh, it's great. New Haven Rising. Oh, y'all doing great. But everybody ain't in New Haven Rising. What about the rest of it? What about the rest of your constituents that vote for y'all? This, you know what I mean? This ain't right. And we just not came through a pandemic, people dying. Listen, please help the people in the community. Ain't about me. I'm gonna be good. God bless these hands. See how dusty they are? I know how to take care of my family. But the rest of the people in this community, they need you guys to help. Please help them. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Coming in is Shafiq Abdul.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Shafiq Abdul, 670 Winthrop Avenue, New Haven, Connecticut, 065.
Oh, sorry. Hold on. That was a technical glitch on our end. Hang on, Mr. Abdul Sabah. I'll bring you back. There we go. Welcome back, sir. Unmute.
Welcome back to the second half of our show. So good evening, alders, constituents, residents, and other public officials. My name is Shafiq Abdul, and I've lived in the city for 54 years. I grew up in New Haven, and my family had the opportunity to work its way out of, I would say, we were never seemed to be poor, but we were always broke. And the New Haven that I know one New Haven. But as the years have gone on, we have one New Haven that has developed into several class systems. And because of policies, outdated policies, because of legislation, unenforced legislation, we have now moved our city into a place where it actually has caste systems, where young people are born into poverty, only to grow up into poverty, only to have a future of potentially being homeless or having unchecked mental health and other issues around poverty that lands them on the other side, as we could say, of the strip. One thing that I would like for you all to consider in your current policy is, and when I came back home in 1991, young people in New Haven, children, were the highest poverty demographic in the city. As we sit here now in 2001, children and young people are still the highest poverty demographic in the city. In fact, New Haven, as we know, has a 25% poverty rate in the state compared to being the top 3 in the state. So I think we really need to focus on what we're going to do to create policy and legislation to develop our young people. And that begins, as I have been said before, what are we going to do about the young people that are not going to college? Yale has given a promise for young people that if you get a 3.0 or 2.9, you can go to college. They will assist you. Who is giving a promise to our young people that are not going to college, that can't go to college, that can't afford to go to college and just doesn't want to go to college? So I think having a robust investment in a trades program for young people that can start in the high school where you can go to career, or you can go to Hill House, or you can go to Cross, you can learn a trade by the time you graduate, you can be certified, and you can go right into the workforce. You go right into one of the work trades. We talk a lot about unions. I'm a big union supporter. I ran the police union as a treasurer for 5 years. My company right now has 265 union members. So we understand unions. But if we are not getting our young people prepared to go into those unions and to have pathways into legitimate job courses, we can be talking about affordable housing. We can be talking about how you feed yourself. In order to have affordable housing, I want a New Haven where young people can buy a house, not try to afford to pay rent in somebody else's house that they own. So I would hope that you would consider this type of suggestions in developing our young people for the city so that we can have a future in New Haven that is not about affordable housing and talking about food insecurity. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Coming in is Takira Bell.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Takira Bell. I live at 570 Russell Street, New Haven, Connecticut. I'd firstly like to thank Mr. Chair and the committee for your public service. I'm a senior at Cooperative Arts and Humanities High School and an organizer with Sunrise New Haven. Although New Haven has made progress with combating homelessness in the area, it continues to be a problem that still needs serious attention. The downtown area has become an almost tent city for the homeless and has been for as long as I can remember. Before the pandemic, it was a regular occurrence to see homeless people sleeping on the benches, panhandling, and digging through the trash for food. Today, I see the same group of homeless people panhandling on I-91 daily. While the number of documented homeless people in Connecticut has declined, too many people still need help. Low-income housing also continues to be run by slumlords who don't always ensure safe and healthy living conditions for their tenants. Those who can find somewhere safe to live struggle with paying their expenses on a minimum wage salary. In terms of solutions, I don't mean forcing away the homeless populations into more secluded areas or shoving them into shelters where they'll only be secure for a night or at best a few. And I don't mean providing citizens with single checks that can only last so long and won't always get to everyone who needs it. We need a better, greener, lasting solution, including more permanent housing in addition to accessible, higher paying jobs and job training. We must also ensure that these are accessible to those who are disabled physically or mentally, and to those who cannot provide for themselves and or their families. Some of the many abandoned buildings throughout the city could be utilized to create safer and affordable housing. This can be done by redistributing the wealth that Yale continues to hoard by not paying property taxes, creating a wedge between Yale and the citizens of New Haven. The goal is and should always be a newer, greener, lasting New Haven. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions or comments from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Coming in is Allison Freeland.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Oh, sorry, I didn't hear you say my name. Sorry. My name's Allison Freeland and my address is 780 Orange Street. I'm in Ward 10. So good evening. Thank you for this opportunity to speak. I am really excited for this agenda and I 100% support it. I'm a transplant to New Haven and I have lived here full-time for 2 years. And in that time, I have tried to become as active as possible in the community. I say this because I have never seen a city so ravaged by one source, the same source that promised to be its making, not its ruin. Yale receives a tax break because it's supposed to act as a nonprofit, but for years it has been running like a business and its endowment is nearing $3 billion. This is unacceptable when New Haven is being run into the ground. Yale, as well as Yale's investments, must prioritize New Haven. Yale must honor its New Haven Works promise. Yale must help New Haven combat the climate crisis. Yale must help combat all of the public health crises, racism and COVID-19 especially. Yale must give more to New Haven. Thank you for all your hard work and all that you do. That's it.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Bringing in Kim Harris.
Good evening. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hi, good evening. My name is Kim Harris, 29 Lander Street, Ward 20, Alder, Delphine, Clyburn. Thank you to the Board of Alders for this meeting this evening. As board chair of Inspire Communities, Inc., we are committed to creating a door to community building possibilities. This evening, I would like to speak to access to living better. When basic living essentials are not met, life becomes a health issue. My neighborhood, Newhallville, is so impacted by poverty pre-COVID. During COVID, how we live and what we live showed its true colors: food disparities, children and youth in trauma, lack of jobs, and even having a daily vaccination center in Newhallville. Here's what we know. Zoning changes that don't tilt to package stores or corner stores could change how we live. Zoning changes allow average Joes and Jolenes to start a business that will provide jobs for Newhallville residents and other residents of underserved communities. Help is what we need. We need access to opportunity for living better. I just like to say this evening that I am in full support of this agenda provided by the Alders. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Are there any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
The chair, that is everyone who had their hand raised. We do have some people in the participants who are on the phone, if they do not know how to raise their hand and they have not yet, they would need to hit *9 so that we can see that they've raised their hand if they wish to speak. Otherwise, you have expended the list.
Thank you.
We do have one who has raised their hand.
All right.
Oh, we have a second. Okay. Addie Kimbrough, and first we'll go here and then to Addie Kimbrough next.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Yvette Hamilton, 327 Edgewood Avenue.
Okay, welcome, colleague.
Alder.
You can go ahead, Alder Hamilton.
Thank you, Chair Rakim, and everyone that is here here this evening for this meeting. I am in total support of the agenda as stated by my colleagues. I am definitely in favor of the need for more affordable housing in our city, that it is imperative that all our residents have a quality place to live. Right now, that is in total decline. A lot of absentee landlords that shark up our residents' money and does not provide quality housing. So I would urge everyone to support this agenda because it is important for all our residents. And Yale need to step up their game because, yes, they need to do better for our residents. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable colleague. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing no questions, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Bringing in Addie Kimbrough.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Good evening. My name is Addie Kimbrough. I live at 113 Shepherd Street in New Haven. What I wanted to say was, or do I dare say, we keep on saying low income housing. I remember the time that we had fair housing with you cut off the landlord how much they could charge at one point. And everyone talks about low income housing and fair housing. What about just going back and just suggesting how much landlord or can charge a person? I know I'm all over the place, but and then we talk about Yale paying their part of fair rent, taxes. Yale always comes up with an excuse of why they do not want to pay more taxes. And there has to be a cutoff point. Our alders, our mayor, government have to write something up to get Yale to pay their fair share of taxes. Thank you for listening to me and have a good night.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you again for your.
Okay, coming in is Maurice Holness.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for giving me the opportunity to speak tonight. I'd like to say I stand in solidarity with my fellow New Haveners. Folks made great testimonies tonight. And I would like to say that a city cannot be inhabited without construction workers. I'd like to also reference the city of Hartford, who has done a really great job of enforcing their residency requirement on construction projects in the city of Hartford. They do a great job of verifying that folks that claim they live in Hartford are actually Hartford residents via utility bills, tax receipts, etc. And I would implore the Board of Alders to implement similar strategies in New Haven. You know, a law is nothing without enforcement. I know previously New Haven had an entity or a division of the city, whether it was LCI or whomsoever, that would go throughout the city and check on job sites to ensure that contractors or construction management or even the construction project owners, whether it be Yale or whomsoever, actually had New Haven residents on the job. I know the requirements are very low, 20%. I would like to encourage the Board of Aldermen to increase that. Currently, I believe Hartford is at 30 or 35% of the project time has to go to Hartford residents. It's important. While I do stand and support your agenda, I'd just like to add that, a little bit more detail to that, and possibly increasing the required amount of hours for New Haven residents. New Haven has a lot of skilled laborers, skilled tradesmen, skilled tradeswomen who are in the trades that build the city, have built the city, continue to allow the city to function. And just really, this is a change that can be done in a short manner of time with legislation and, more importantly, enforcement. Going around to Yale and the various construction sites, whether it be the schools that we're building or what have you, and just ensuring that New Haven residents get a fair shake, get a fair share. And, while the entire state and the country is struggling, it's important to note that the city has a lot to offer. The residents have a lot of skills to offer. We live here. We should get the majority of the time on these job sites, not just 20% of the time, where the contractor can turn around and say, oh, we've met our requirement. Go home now. Thank you, New Haven.
30 seconds.
I appreciate the 30 seconds warning. And just to say again, really, we need to have legislation with enforcement when it comes to working and living in New Haven. We live here, we work here, but we want a bigger piece of the pie when working in the city that we live in. Thank you. Have a great night.
Thank you very much for your testimony. Any questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony.
Okay, again, Mr. Chair, at this time, there are no additional hands raised. For those who are on the phone, I know it may be a little more difficult for them, so we will repeat one more time that if they wish to speak, they need to hit *9 so we can see that they've raised their hand. For anyone else who has not spoken that wishes to speak, you see the raise hand button, you can hit that. All right, we have one, your former colleague.
Okay, Alder Emeritus Cologne, please state your name and address for the record.
You need to unmute. You have unmuted, you may speak.
Please state your name and address for the record.
From our Alder Cologne, if you are speaking, we cannot hear you.
Reminder to use *9, please.
Okay, she's trying again. We still cannot hear you. You are muted, former Alder Cologne. You are now unmuted. Go ahead and speak. Now there we go. Okay. Just make sure that your microphone is on because we can't hear you yet. We see you muting and unmuting. So we know you're trying, we just can't hear you. So please unmute again and try speaking.
Is it possible for her to call in?
You can try to call Alder Cologne so that you can speak. That may work better if you wish to call in from your phone because something is happening with your microphone. All right, so former Alder Cologne, if you will text me, I will try to get you in. And while we work on your audio, that is the end of those who have testified on this item. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We will take a brief commercial break. Again, if anyone is, I guess I'll just do my legal thing. If anyone is wishing to testify, oh, actually, we have another item.
You do?
Yes. Thank you. So if anyone is here representing the city concerning this wonderful grant we'd love to, address, please speak now or forever hold your peace.
And letting Brooke Logan in for the health item.
Oh, wonderful.
It's not Brooke. Here's Brooke. Okay.
Please state your name and address for the record.
Brooke Logan, 96 Village Lane, Branford, Connecticut. I apologize for the technical difficulties earlier, so thank you for giving me the opportunity to give you an overview of this grant this evening. The health department is asking permission to apply for and accept a grant in the amount of $355,000 and $16 annually for 3 years from Family Centered Services of Connecticut. The grant would begin July 1st of this year and continue through June 30th of 2024. With these funds, the health department can continue to offer an evidence-based home visitation program called Parents as Teachers for parents and their children from prenatal to age 5. The goal of Parents as Teachers are to increase parental knowledge of early childhood development and improve parenting practices, provide early detection of developmental delays and health issues among young children, prevent child abuse and neglect, and increase children's school readiness and success. We plan to recruit families through the birthing hospitals such as Yale New Haven, the New Haven Breastfeeding Task Force, and early childhood providers. Any individual with a child between the ages of prenatal and age 5 may participate in the program. The funding would be used to hire 3 full-time home visitors and 1 full-time clinical supervisor. Each home visitor would have a caseload of approximately 12 to 15 families that they would conduct weekly hour-long home visits with. Additional funding would be used for program affiliation fees in the curriculum, as well as client incentives such as diapers and food cards. That is the overview of the program. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Great, thank you very much. I'm just going to start with my standard question, which is, have you all formally applied for the grant as of yet?
The grant went in January 29th. The paperwork to get on the Board of Alder agenda was submitted prior to that.
Do you know what date?
I can get that for you. 1 second. It went in January 21st, and the application was submitted the 29th.
Okay. Any other questions from members of the committee? Seeing none, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Have a good evening.
You too.
Thanks.
Okay.
All right, so we're still working on former Alder Cologne. I see her mic is open. Are you able to speak, former Alder Cologne? And then we had one final person, Mr. Sal, here, who also wanted to testify on the previous item.
Oh, okay. While we wait, I will ask if anyone would like to testify on the grant. Oh, Alder Cologne, we see you. Oh, we can't hear you. Oh, no. Oh.
Let me see if I can.
No.
We do have an email from your former colleague that expresses her support for the agenda, even though we cannot hear her verbally. She did send that in writing, and she did say in that email that she wanted to thank the board for continuing to follow along with those items that were priority items even during her tenure.
We appreciate that, Alder Emeritus, former chair of the Black and Hispanic Caucus, Cologne. Thank you for your service to the city. It's so good to see you. And I will ask for the legal point, if anyone would like to testify on the grant. Is there anyone wishing to testify about the grant? Is anyone wishing to testify on the grant? Okay, now we'll go back to the legislative agenda item, and we had our colleague, the third officer. Is that Alder Cola? Is that who Sal is? Or?
You are muted. Go ahead.
State your name and address for the record. Okay, I can hear me, but I cannot hear you. So Al,
we will ask that the wonderful testifier send us their testimony since we can hear them. Oh, wait a minute. I thought we had audio for a second.
Yeah, that's you. They might have stepped away from their device.
Okay, fair enough. We will get them to forward to the public testimony. Their testimony.
Okay. Are there any members of the public wishing to testify on the legislative agenda item? If you are on the phone, you would have to press *9. If you are not, all you have to do is use the raise hand function.
No one has raised their hand, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I will do my thing. Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify? Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify? Are there any other members of the public wishing to testify? Seeing none, the chair will entertain a motion to close the public portion of this hearing.
Make a motion to close the public portion of this meeting.
Hearing a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Any abstention? We have closed the public portion of this hearing. We will now, well, the floor is open to members of the committee to do as they please. What is the pleasure of the committee on the 3 items? Actually, leave the legislative agenda item for me.
Mr. Chair, I move item 1.
Item 1 would be?
Item 1 being is item 1 not I move the Equality Act item.
Okay, do I hear a second?
Second.
All right, here, moving second, discussion. Alder Sabin.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As I said in my statement earlier, I think this resolution is an important statement by our city and on behalf of an important piece of federal legislation that would enact protections for the LGBT community and ensure that they have access to jobs and housing and public accommodations and a number of other things. And I urge my colleagues to support the resolution. Thank you.
Discussion. Alder Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would agree with my colleague from the first word that this resolution is really crucial as it supports efforts to realize true equality for all Americans and to end discrimination and extend real civil rights to the LGBT community. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Alder Kupo.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to stand in support of the resolution and want to thank my colleague from Ward 1 for his work on bringing this to our board. I think particularly this evening, as we're talking about health equity, as we're talking about right to housing, as we're talking about a more equitable New Haven, all of that, I believe relates directly to the Equality Act, and so I'm glad to see it move forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Any further discussion on the item? Alder Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair. I stand in support, and I want to thank my colleague, Alder Sabin, for bringing this to the table. We already know what the federal is doing. It's just important. It's important that we fall in line. We're on this Democratic ticket and we're on this role as Democrats. We need to be inclusive. And at the end of the day, love is love. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. And I'll just take Alder Clyburn.
Yes,
Okay.
Thank you. Chair Brakeem, I support this because it doesn't matter who you are in life. You're human. You breathe. We all bleed. And everyone who is on this earth should have rights and to be loved. And I support this. So thank you. Thank you.
Appreciate all the discussion, and I'll just take the chairman's privilege to acknowledge Alder Sabin, who had submitted this item many months ago. But due to the nature of what we've been experiencing, obviously we wanted to make this a priority, and what a perfect day, perfectly timed, and seeing the passage of it going from the House of Representatives to the Senate. So I really want to acknowledge Alder Sabin, and I would just like to note for, I guess, a task for Alder Sabin, if you can just follow up with the work that you are doing. It appears it's going across the state, and you're going to be a part of a coalition, it seems. I'd like to hear more about that. So please submit a correspondence in the future to kind of give us an update on where we are in the 169 municipalities and what we can do and what we should be doing in order to ensure that our local policies and ordinances are in compliance with what I believe should be a strong passage of an item. Does the chair entertain a motion at the pleasure of the committee to hear a motion on this item to vote? Therefore, all in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, abstention, the item is passed favorably. We're at the pleasure of the committee to move an item.
Mr. Chair, I move the item from the health director authorizing the city to apply for and accept the family-centered services grant.
Hearing a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, discussion.
Chair,
Yes, all
I just hope this really this ministry of this, I hope it really be in the neighborhood of needs, and I hope we really have. They said someone would go to their homes, so I'm hopefully this really happen for this city. I like the services. I just hope it really happens.
Well, before I actually continue to other discussion, I'd like to strongly suggest that possibly through yourself or we can ask for a follow-up to ensure that we don't need to go on hope. We should go on facts. And I think we should hold the health department accountable to the priorities that were stated to ensure that communities in need are indeed being favored by it. So that's just my suggestion.
What's with these helps?
Discussion. Vice Chair.
Mr. Chair, thank you. And I want to thank my colleague, I'll have one. And I want to thank you for saying that we should hold the health department accountable. Our residents hold us accountable in the, especially in the neighborhood needs. They hold us accountable, whether they vote or they don't vote. We have an obligation as their elders to make sure that they're taken care of, and that we are the gatekeepers of the community. And it is my desire that our neighborhoods of needs are looked after, and that the city of New Haven Health Department and all its services under the CSA, under the scope of the CSA, is given to them that will that need. And many times we see a lot of people, and I'm not throwing shade, but I guess I am throwing shade. A lot of people are in these areas of not so need, getting the services that so much is needed in the neighborhood of needs. And that has to be a change. And I want to give kudos to the health department, Director Bond, but we still need to see a little more action in the neighborhoods of needs. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair. Any further discussion? All right, seeing no further discussion, is the will of the committee to take the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 All opposed, please say nay. Any abstentions? The item is passed favorably. Excuse me for a moment. Okay. It is the will of the chair and this committee that we discharge the legislative agenda item to the full board to be taken up for immediate action. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing it moved and second. I'm going to open this up for discussion, and I'm going to step out of what I normally would do and open the discussion to members of the full board at this time, to allow comments considering the nature of the discharge of this item. I would first, I'm not sure if Madam President is here. I see her, but I'm not totally sure if she's present. But I would like to give her, okay, I would like to give it over to the president at this time for any words or discussion.
I would just like to thank everybody for coming, right? We had almost the full board on a call. So this just shows how important these priorities are to all of us and all of our communities. And we heard from a number of different people. These are things that would really enrich and change people's lives, and it's up to us to do it. And I'm just excited about tonight and excited about this process. We have to hold each other accountable and push each other harder to make sure we're doing what our community is expecting of us. Thank you.
Any further discussion? Mr. Majority Leader.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just want to thank you for hearing this and your committee, your professionalism, your veracity, and the patience, and your ability to run such a tight committee and having all these testimonies come through. It is only 9:30. If I was chairing this committee, it'll be about 12 o'clock and we still have 15 more people to go. And so I want to congratulate you and the committee for taking the time to hear this and getting this moved on. It was so important for us to hear from all the residents and all the positive feedback that we got. But I especially wanted to thank you, Mr. Chair, and the committee for taking on this item. Thank you.
I appreciate that. Alder Marchand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll just second what my distinguished colleague from the 27th Ward just said about the expert manner in which you conducted the meeting. Thank you so much. And I would just want to remark on the fact that I listened to all of the testimony as all of you did, and not a single person disagreed with the issues that are presented in this agenda. We had people make suggestions about particular facets or programs or challenges that they would urge us to tackle. We heard some people say, please move more quickly and more boldly, but I didn't hear a single person say that these were the wrong things for us to be looking at. And that's testimony to the fact that this board and the leadership have listened very carefully to residents over the last several years and have identified these key areas that we want to work on, that we have worked on. And I think I'm really pleased with the turnout from the community, the participation of the board. And again, thank you, Mr. Chair, for your very able handling of the meeting. And I thank all my colleagues for their fortitude and endurance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Greatly appreciative. A discussion. And again, this is open to, Deputy Majority Leader Evelyn Rodriguez.
I too want to say thank you very much to the entire committee, Mr. Chair, and the Robert Rules of Order, I believe were very nicely demonstrated in the work that you and the committee did. And I also want to say thank you because the participation of the public was significant. And we got a lot of important feedback to clearly indicate that the public is really, or our residents are really interested in the 5 goals of the legislative agenda. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the entire committee.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Majority Leader. Any other discussion?
I do.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, I want to say, I just look at you and I said, look at all that endurance that you have, the patience, the kindness. I'm just overwhelmed by the love I seen you gave everyone who spoke tonight. And I also want to definitely say thank you to everyone who spoke tonight, who made their voices heard. And I believe just by listening to them, they're ready across this city. Every ward is ready to come together and stand on these priorities. And even more things I heard that they even said, let's take on this, let's do this. You know, I'm just so grateful that the people voiced, and I'm sure they will be willing to stand together and take action as well. So thank you again, and I want to say thank you to all my colleagues tonight, and especially the ones that's on Human Services Committee. Thank you for your patience, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you. The floor is open for further discussion.
Do you want more pasta?
Well,
Yeah, we're giving a pasta here on this side. So, any other further discussion? Alder Winter.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would echo the gratitude folks have extended to you for running an exceedingly efficient meeting, and also to our vice chair for his excellent, firm and fair timekeeping. And also, second what Alder Marchand said, that I do think that the lack of disagreement tonight speaks to how well the legislative priorities, capture the consensus in the city. And I think what's exciting is on some of these issues, particularly as it relates to zoning changes for, some folks mentioned new business opportunities. Of course, affordable housing is a key priority for everyone. That some of these things are really within our power, and that we really can act on them. Others, like the idea of Medicare for all, involve the federal government or the state government. But something like zoning is something that I think it's exciting that we could take some of that feedback and the recommendations of the Affordable Housing Commission and move with it. So yeah, I'm grateful to everyone and to all the members of the public who testified for their involvement in this process. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I was happy to be the last. Have words. I do want to thank you for your professionalism and been learned a lot just sitting as your vice chair. This meeting tonight, the people have spoken, and we as their elders are listening. United we stand and divided we fall. I don't ever want to become an overnight wonder, because you'll definitely be an overnight blunder. And tonight, we have a long road ahead of us, but we can conquer all these miles if we are united in what we do and we stand together and there's no division among us. I'm honored to sit on this committee, and I'm honored to serve with my colleagues, but my obligation is to ensure that the people of this city needs to be met. Their needs need to be met, and I am definitely committed to helping meeting these needs. Thank you so very much for this opportunity.
Thank you. Floor is still open for discussion. All right, being that there's no discussion, I'll have my final say in just saying a good chair is only a reflection of a great committee. It's the committee members who actually agreed to the rules, and I've only abided by what was voted on and agreed to at the beginning of the term. And I'll also say a good chair is also backed up by the vice chair. It's good cop, bad cop. You're the one cop, you have to do the tough job, and I once was in that role as well. So it's a good learning role for sure. And I believe it's the success of this committee that'll ensure the future work of many great agendas moving forward as this item. So we have moved and we will now take a vote. I have suspended the rules and allow my colleagues to join us, so feel free to join in on the vote. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Any in opposition, please say nay. Any abstention? The item passes. And now the chair would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we adjourn.
Hearing a motion, do I hear a second?
Second.
Second.
Hearing a second. All in favor say aye.
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 Opposed, nay. Abstentions. Have a great night.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Good night.